Chapter 1580. Logically speaking, it was a good thing that the opponent didn't dodge. But for some reason, Muong had a bad feeling in his heart. Soon, his feeling became reality. The fist collided with his body, and then he felt his whole body fall apart as if he was electrocuted. Then, he fell to the ground and fainted. But before he fainted, Muong vaguely saw a big foot stepping on his head. He didn't know what would happen next, nor did he have time to think about it, because he had already closed his eyes in pain. Okay, Violent Ape, this person's identity is important. We can't let him die now. A shout rang out behind him. Only then did the black-clothed man stop his foot that was about to land. Then, he fiercely stomped to the side, forcefully creating a shallow pit in the ground. Only then did he continue to walk forward, completing his mission of investigating the enemy. Sixth young master, Violent Ape is like this. He was born with great strength and a bad temper, but fortunately, he didn't ruin anything. Silver Hand wiped the sweat on his forehead and said nervously to Yang Chendong, "It's okay as long as he doesn't die. Even if he does die, it's okay." Yang Chendong shrugged indifferently. This time, his backup plan was the soldiers of the Wolf Fong Special Forces. Over the years, the development of the Wolf Fong Special Forces wasn't fast. It could even be described as slow, but their strength was really terrifying. They spent most of their time on training, and their strength was terrifying. If it was just a one-on-one, even the Black Cavalry wouldn't be their opponent. It was precisely because of the high intensity of training that they were very strict when recruiting people, so the development speed wasn't fast. But their overall combat strength was really tyrannical. This time, Yang Chendong gave them an early order to hide in Yunnan Manor and wait for orders. Yang Chendong had a large warehouse, but he wasn't a reckless person. In order to be foolproof, he had double insurance before entering the city. For example, there was the Cold Front 1st Army's 1st Division's 1st Regiment lurking in the 3 Provincial Armies recruit camp, and there were nearly 300 Wolf Fong Special Forces members. Although there weren't many of them in total, they were the most powerful of them all. Since they were going to turn the enemy's stomach upside down, they would naturally choose quality over quantity. This time, there were a total of 130 Special Forces members who appeared at the Xingwang Temple. Each of them could fight against 10 or even dozens of people. They were well prepared and equipped with the most advanced firearms. It was only 300 assassins, and they could easily wipe them out. If it wasn't for the fact that he had to keep some of them alive to interrogate them, he would have finished off all of them with just one round of gunfire. Then again, even Mu Ang's counterattack was easily blocked. What was the use of the others struggling? It was as if Blowstone had also launched a counterattack. His opponent was Steel Leg. Unable to use the ninja's concealment jutsu, in just 3 rounds, he was kicked in the right arm. The bones in his arm were shattered, and he fainted. Under the encirclement of 130 Wolf Fong members, no one who resisted had a good ending. Those who underestimated the enemy were seriously injured and fainted. Those who were seriously injured were directly killed. It was a clean and quick death. Yang Chendong stopped paying attention to what was happening on the battlefield after he saw the members of Wolf Fong attacking so cleanly and efficiently. Since the people who should be lured out had been lured out, there was no need for him to hide any strength. It was also time to counterattack. Silver Hand, where is your captain? Reporting to the 6th young master, the captain is leading people to the periphery of the 3 provinces' king's mansion. He's just waiting for the order to enter the mansion to take the people. Silver Hand was arranged to cooperate with Yang Chendong to eliminate the assassins because he was rational in doing things. But in the Wolf Fong Special Forces, the real big brother was still the Captain Tai Hu. Okay, I will take 20 people away. The rest will be left to you. Clean up this place. When they wake up, interrogate them one by one. I want to know all the secrets in their hearts. Yang Chendong patted Silver Hand's shoulder and said so. Please rest assured, 6th young master, I promise to complete the task. This slap made Silver Hand extremely excited. He even noticed that the other team members were looking at him with envy. This was Yang Chendong, the soul of Yang Xie, the founder of the 5-Star Army and also the founder of the Wolf Fong Special Forces. It could be said that everyone's current achievements were all thanks to Yang Chendong. A person who was like a god in their eyes actually patted him on the shoulder. How could his comrades not be envious? Yang Chendong didn't think so much. Instead, he had already left the Xingwang Temple under the protection of 20 members of the Special Forces and went straight to the Three Provinces King's Mansion. At the Three Provinces King's Mansion, the atmosphere was a little tense at the moment. The battlefield in the small courtyard couldn't be taken down for a long time. The people in the city began to join in. When a mutiny outside, General Kai Wenju was killed, and so on were reported to Zhu Huitwan. His face was already very ugly. He didn't expect things to turn out like this. Men, immediately take this king's tiger tally and mobilize the troops. Invite General Luo Guan, Rajiv, Azad, and Hack from the Mengding Mansion to the Yunnan Mansion. No matter what, we must kill Yang Chendong. Go quickly. Zhu Huitwan's voice was no longer as calm as it used to be. He couldn't help but be anxious. Once Yang Chendong escaped this time, he would be at a disadvantage righteously. In this way, the people of the three provinces who knew the truth would no longer believe him. Once they stood on Yang Chendong's side, how could he make a comeback? He wasn't afraid of the people, but an organized group of people was terrifying. Even if these people couldn't be used by him, they couldn't be used by Yang Chendong. But now, it seemed that he had underestimated the commoners' strength. To think that they had gathered an army of over 10,000 commoners right under his nose. What kind of means did they have to use to achieve this? Thinking of this, Zhu Huihua felt his scalp tingle. He felt as if a huge mountain was pressing down on him, making it hard for him to breathe. The best way to solve all of this was to kill Yang Chendong. Once this person was gone, the people would lose their nuclear core force, and it would be much easier to deal with them. In the end, Yang Chendong had to die. That's right. Inform Wu Yingtu to immediately enter the city and cooperate with General Meng Neng to take over the city's defense. Once the five-star army appears outside the city, we must defend the city and wait for reinforcements. After thinking about it, Zhu Huitwan decided that this Miao King would come in handy. Zhu Huitwan didn't completely believe in the Miao people. Therefore, on the surface, it seemed like he put Wu Yingtu in an important position, but he didn't allow the Miao army to enter the city. He only allowed them to set up camp outside the city. But now, seeing that the situation in the city was getting out of control, he thought of the 10,000 Miao soldiers and decided to put them in an important position. After giving out a few orders, Zhu Huitwan sat back on the throne and his face looked much better. Next, he waited for news and battle reports from various parties. At the same time, he was also looking forward to the possibility that Wang Zhanjiang could kill Yang Chendong. Zhu Huitwan didn't know that Yang Chendong had already left the courtyard in the dark. Not only that, but the two assassin teams that were most likely to threaten his safety were also eliminated. However, this wasn't the worst. The worst thing was that his mansion was surrounded. Even the slightest movement here couldn't escape the surveillance of the Langia Special Force led by Tai Hu. Just like the few messengers he sent out, it seemed like they had left the mansion and were safe. However, as soon as they walked into the nearby streets, they would be immediately intercepted and killed. It was still okay if they put down their weapons and surrendered, they could still live. However, anyone who resisted would be killed without mercy. In other words, all the orders in the mansion were only to enter and not to leave. After Yang Chendong arrived outside the mansion, the news couldn't even enter because there was no need to hide anything. They could directly lay their cards on the table. The sixth young master, Yang Chendong's appearance made Tai Hu and the others excited. Their eyes were filled with admiration. Although Tai Hu was the captain of the Langia Special Force and looked majestic, they were originally a special force that was independent of the five-star army. In other words, their actions were not under the jurisdiction of the five-star army. They didn't need to report their whereabouts. They were very mysterious and powerful. However, this was only in front of ordinary people. In front of Yang Chendong, these so-called arrogants could be removed one by one. It was because of Yang Chendong that the Langia Special Force had everything. It was also because of Yang Chendong's support that the Langia Special Force could be treated like this. Therefore, when facing the real founder of the Langia Special Force, Taihu and the others only had respect and obedience in their eyes. Well done. Yang Qindong had always been a person who was not stingy with his praise. When he walked to Taihu's side, his right hand naturally fell on his shoulder and gently patted him. Then, he asked about the situation in the mansion. Reporting to the sixth young master, there are a total of 3 doors in the mansion: the main door, the back door, and the side door. I have arranged people to watch over these 3 doors. I guarantee that when they come out, they will be killed. All their connections with the outside world have been cut off. Taihu straightened his body and made a simple report of the situation. Very good. Yang Qindong nodded with satisfaction after listening. How was the situation in the mansion? If we rush in now, how confident are we in controlling this place? Reporting to the sixth young master, Skinny Monkey has already gone in just now. The situation inside is basically clear. There are about 400 bodyguards of Zhu Huihua in the mansion. There are also more than 100 servants and servants in the mansion. They don't have much fighting power. Therefore, as long as the sixth young master gives the order, we have absolute confidence in controlling this place. However, there may be some movements. After all, no one knows if Zhu Huihua has other means of rescue. When Taihu said this, he didn't look very confident. Chapter 1581. To be able to become the king of 3 provinces, it was normal for him to have some tricks up his sleeve. However, if he was not wrong, he would only release smoke to warn others of the danger. However, since Yang Qindong had decided to make a move, he was naturally not afraid of others knowing. Moreover, Chushi had already said that there should be a person called Mo Gue in the palace. He was the most troublesome existence because he knew nothing about this person. He did not know if this person had any other tricks up his sleeve. Whatever, the city is already in chaos. Now that the citizens have joined the war, we can't wait any longer. Otherwise, we will lose our strength. Let's do it this way. Tell everyone to get ready. We will attack in 10 minutes. We must finish the battle in the shortest time possible. As for whether there will be any reinforcements, we don't have to worry about that. With the current situation, I want to see who will come to save the king of 3 provinces. Yang Qindong made his final decision. He had 500 black cavalry soldiers to defend a few small courtyards. Now that the palace was so big, he had more than 100 Wolf Fong Special Force soldiers. He was more confident in facing any unexpected situation. One must know that there was everything in the warehouse. At worst, he could take out a small portion of the weapons in the warehouse, and it would be enough to solve any problems. Not to mention, once Zhu Huichun was taken down, the people of the 3 provinces would be in danger. Who would think that they would come to save him? Since Yang Qindong had said so, Taihu naturally did not have any doubts. After saluting, he immediately went to make arrangements. After the most elite Wolf Fong took action, they had already formulated 3 battle plans in just 10 minutes. This was to ensure that once an unknown situation occurred, they would be able to guarantee that they could immediately change the plan to solve the problem. Sixth young master. When Taihu came in front of Yang Qindong again, his face was full of confidence. Let's do it. Yang Qindong, of course, knew that this was already prepared. He nodded his head. Let's do it. Taihu immediately turned around. Even though the sun had not risen yet, when he uttered those 2 words, hundreds of black shadows could be seen moving in different directions. They were advancing towards the prince mansions of the 3 provinces from 3 different directions. The battle outside was in full swing. Although the atmosphere in the 3 provincial palaces was a little tense, no one thought that there would be danger here. After all, the Southern Cloud Manor was still in the hands of their king. Therefore, ordinary people were still doing what they were supposed to do. Many of the guards were still sleeping and resting. Only a portion of the guards were patrolling the mansion, but they were just walking around. When the members of the special forces suddenly appeared like ghosts, many of the guards fell to the ground before they could react to what had happened. Most of them had a fatal wound on their bodies. One of the weapons that the special forces members were most used to using was the 3-pronged bayonet. This type of weapon was already banned in the future. Its lethality was too great. Once one was injured by it, one would basically die from excessive bleeding. Scheming against the unsuspecting. With the strong attacking the weak, the patrolling guards didn't even have time to react before a third of them died. At this moment, someone finally reacted and began to shout loudly to warn the others. However, shouting at this moment wouldn't affect the overall situation. Even if the guards who were already resting woke up and took out their swords, they would only be able to hold on for a little longer. Not good, not good. A guard rushed into the main hall of the prince mansion and knelt down in front of the prince of the 3 provinces, Zhu Huichen. What's going on? Why are you so flustered? Zhu Huichen was unhappy. On the other hand, Chun Tian, who was standing at the side waiting for news, had an extremely ugly expression. This was because he could vaguely hear the battle cries, and it didn't seem to be far away. This made his scalp tingle. Reporting to your majesty, someone suddenly launched an attack on the prince mansion. The guards. What's wrong with the guards? Zhu Huichen walked forward impatiently and grabbed the guard's collar as he asked anxiously. The guards can't hold on anymore. What? Hearing this, Zhu Huichen couldn't help but let go of his right hand and involuntarily took a few steps back until he came to Chen Tian's side. After being supported by Chen Tian, he stopped. However, his face was pale and it was obvious that he was frightened. Even Chen Tian, who was behind him, wasn't any better. This was because he didn't expect that someone would have designs on the prince mansion at this time and harm the prince mansion. However, intuitively, he still didn't think that it was Yang Qindong's doing. This was Yunnan Manor, and the other party was surrounded in the small courtyard. Logically speaking, the other party should be unable to protect himself. Why would they come to find trouble with him? How would Chun Tian know that Yang Qindong's personal strength was strong? Under the dark sky, with his master-level movement technique, unless someone was watching him, it wouldn't be difficult for him to break out of the encirclement. Chen Tian didn't think that it was Yang Qindong's doing. He looked at the guard and asked, "Do you know who is coming? How many people are there?" "I don't know. Those people are too strong. Our guards aren't their opponents at all. We only held on for a while because of our advantage in numbers. However, now that we don't have the advantage in numbers, we can't hold on any longer. Your Majesty, please think of a way." The guard who reported the news shook his head. Under the dark sky, how could he have the time to observe those things? He was only here to report the news. On the other hand, Zhu Huichen was worthy of being the king of 3 provinces. He still had some courage. The panic just now was only because of the sudden incident. Now that he knew the situation outside, he immediately said, go, instead of fire. Inform the people outside that the prince mansion is in danger. Oh, the guard responded and turned to leave. Zhu Huichen, who was left behind, grabbed Chen Tian's arm and went straight to the inner courtyard. A cunning rabbit has 3 burrows. Zhu Huichen killed his elder brother and younger brother. He also offended the Southern Ming dynasty and Bugnam of Gojoseon. Under such circumstances, how could he not have a backup plan? For example, there was a secret basement in the prince mansion. The people who built the basement had been killed by him. Now, as long as he hid there, it would be difficult to be discovered. Zhu Huichen pulled Chun Tian and didn't take anyone else with him. He didn't even care about his family members. He quietly disappeared from the prince mansion and hid in a secret room. As the host, Zhu Huichen was prepared. However, as a guest, Immerse didn't have such conditions. When he learned that someone had killed their way into the prince mansion, he let out a long sigh. Then, he went to the transmitter and started to send a message. This was the last telegram that Immerse could send. He had already thought of the content. However, he had been hoping that he wouldn't need to use the content in his life. But now, even the prince mansion of 3 provinces was about to be attacked. He knew that it was time. This was a telegram of desperation. Immerse sent the message that someone had killed their way into the prince mansion and that he would be killed soon. He also reported that Zhu Huichen was a good-for-nothing who was indecisive. That was why he had ruined the good situation. It was a mistake to ally with such a person. Yes, Immerse thought that Yang Qindong was going to die. There were only 500 people. So what if they were powerful? If Zhu Huichen came up to kill, he would directly send all the 50,000 troops in the city. Even if the other party had firearms, under the absolute advantage of numbers, he would be able to break through the defense line and kill Yang Chendong. However, the stupid Zhu Huichun chose to capture Yang Chendong alive. As a result, he lost the initiative. When Mo Gui wanted to change his mind, it was too late. After that, Mo Gui expressed his gratitude to Uncle Ing for saving his life. He said that it was time for him to repay Uncle Ing for saving his life. He would die to repay Uncle Ying's kindness. After sending the telegram, Mo Gui dismantled the radio station and buried it where he had dug the hole. He didn't want people to know that there was a radio station here, because it would make people think of Uncle Ing behind him and threaten the safety of some people. When he was done, the battle cries outside the door were getting closer and closer. Mo Gui smiled bitterly and took out a pill from his sleeve. He swallowed it without hesitation and closed his mouth. Clang! The door was pushed open and 2 special forces rushed in. It wasn't difficult for Langya to take down the entire Prince Mansion. In the end, all the guards in the mansion were killed. The few who surrendered survived. Unfortunately, I didn't find Zhu Huichun. Even Chun Tian, the civil official, was nowhere to be found. Bring Zhu Changjiu here. Yang Chendong called the steward of the prince's mansion, who had been instigated by Yang San, after failing to find anyone and even searching twice carefully, came to no avail. Zhu Changjiu came to Yang Chendong, trembling with fear. After knowing the identity of the person who came, he knelt on the ground and shouted, "Long live Bugnam of Gojoseon! Well, don't be afraid. You're one of us. We won't make things difficult for you. When we're done here, you can go to Yangxie and reunite with your sister. You're a meritorious official, so you'll be rewarded accordingly." After comforting him, Yang Chendong asked if there was a secret passage or a basement in the mansion. Although Zhu Changjiu had been with Zhu Huichun for many years, he didn't know much about it. He shook his head and said, "Your Majesty, I really don't know about it." Yang Chendong was not surprised by this answer. After all, Zhu Huihua had even abandoned his wife and child. In other words, even his family members did not know the location of the secret passage, let alone a steward of the residence. Well, you should know a man called Mo Gui, right? Oh, yes, the mysterious man you reported to Director Yang San. Chapter 1582. His name is Mo Gui. This humble one knows this person. Zhu Changjiu, who had regained his senses, quickly replied, "Okay, bring him in." Yang Chendong waved his hand, and Mo Gui, who was pale, was carried into the yard and stood in front of Zhu Changjiu. Zhu Changjiu had indeed taken poison. The special forces were still a step too late and did not manage to save him. But even so, Yang Chendong still needed to confirm this person's identity. Once he was sure, he might be able to obtain some information by searching for this person's identity. Yes, he's the mysterious man. Zhu Changjiu didn't know Mo Gui's name, but he had seen him before, so he recognized him immediately. "All right, thank you. You can go and rest now." Yang Chendong nodded. His gaze fell on the dead Mo Gui as he spoke regretfully. He was so close to catching this person. If he guessed correctly, this person should be the mole who reported Yang Xie's situation to Zhu Huichun. But he didn't know who ordered him to do so. Yang Chendong had a good memory. He thought about it carefully. It was definitely the first time he saw Mo Gui. It made sense. The mole was so careful that he couldn't find any clues even after investigating for a long time. Why would he send someone to contact Zhu Huichun? Come, take care of this person's body and get someone to draw a portrait. Yang Chendong still hoped that someone could recognize Mo Gui. Maybe there would be new clues. Sixth young master, our people found this radio in Mo Gui's yard. Tai Hu appeared, holding a dark green iron box. Oh, Yang Chendong's eyes lit up. Every radio station was a big warehouse item. When it was distributed, it had a serial number and was kept. Perhaps he could find some clues from this radio station. For example, the number 9826 was written at the bottom of the radio station. This was an important clue. Yang Chendong asked Tai Hu to keep it well and hand it over to Bureau Chief Yang San so that he could investigate it. By the way, what's the situation outside? Before Zhu Huichun disappeared, there was a big fire in the mansion. Everyone in the city must know that the mansion was in danger. If there were reinforcements, they should be here soon. Our brothers are watching outside. They haven't reported back yet, so there shouldn't be any reinforcements, Taihu replied respectfully. No reinforcements? Hee, then there shouldn't be any. After Yang Chendong heard this, a smile appeared on his face. Although it was already dark, it was impossible for the prince's mansion not to attract attention when it first caught fire and was followed by billowing smoke. If there were reinforcements, they would have been here long ago. But it had been half an hour, and no reinforcements were still not here, which meant there was a big problem. It would be best if there were no reinforcements. Even if there were, Yang Chendong would not be afraid. So this problem was quickly put to the back of his mind. He looked at Taihu and said, "Don't worry about the outside. Hurry up and find a secret passage or the basement. This king has a feeling that Zhu Huichun is still in the yard. He hasn't gone far." The reason why Yang Chendong dared to make such an assertion was naturally because he saw the location of the three provinces' king palaces. This was the central area of the city. The people living nearby were either rich or noble. If it was just digging a secret passage in a mansion, it could be done quietly as long as he was careful. But if he wanted to dig it out, it would be too difficult to not alarm the rich who valued safety. In addition, Zhu Huichun's position as the king of the three provinces was still very stable. There was no reason for him to take the risk of digging an escape passage. It was very likely that there was only a basement here. It was just for hiding. If this was the case, it was not difficult to find him. It just needed some time. Understood. After receiving the order, Taihu, who was in charge of the special forces, began to search the courtyards one by one. As long as there was a trace of suspicion, they would dig 3 feet into the ground to take a closer look. Let's not talk about finding the passage first. Let's talk about General Meng Neng, who was also in the city. This general, who was entrusted with an important task by Zhu Huichun, was now standing on the wall of Yunnan Manor with a thoughtful expression. He naturally knew about the warning from the king palaces, but he did not send out troops to meet them. Speaking of which, Meng Neng naturally had his own reasons for doing this. For example, he suspected that there should be a trap waiting for him around the king palaces. Once he went, he was afraid that not only would he not be able to save people, but he might also lose his life. He was naturally willing to do such a risky thing. Of course, the most important point was the second point, which was that Meng Neng was dissatisfied with Zhu Huichun. Meng Neng was previously under King Minzhuang, Zhu Huichun. At that time, Zhu Huichun was only King Guantong. Later, this person rebelled, killed his own brother, and set up his own house. Meng Neng followed him, but he was still only a general. Speaking of which, a general seemed to be very awe-inspiring. But in fact, those who understood the military structure of the three provinces knew that Zhu Huiyu had personally appointed several great generals, such as Yunnan's great general Luo Guan, Guizhou's great general Jiang Wuqing, Guangxi's great general Bai Kuan, and so on. Meng Neng was also a general, which made him dissatisfied. No matter what, he had the merit of supporting the emperor. If it did not follow Zhu Huichun, but followed King Minzhuang, how could there be the current king of the three provinces? Now, Zhu Huichun was the king of the three provinces, but he was still a general. He was also arranged to be by Zhu Huichun's side and was not allowed to lead troops alone. This obviously showed that Zhu Huichun did not trust him. Meng Neng remembered very clearly that Zhu Huichun had promised him before that once he achieved great things, he would be the general of the army. At that time, all the generals would be under his control. Only the word commander was added, but he could indeed become the highest commander in the army. Zhu Huichun's slip of the tongue made Meng Neng unhappy. Now, he was worried that there was an ambush in the king's mansion, so why would he take the risk? Pass down the order. Without a military order, no one is to act rashly. Meng Neng said thoughtfully. At this moment, Meng Neng was watching and waiting to see how the situation would develop. With military power, he was confident that no matter what the situation was, he could deal with it. As long as the main force of the five-star army did not appear, the initiative was in his hands. Outside the city, Wu Yingtu also received the report from the scouts and knew about the fire and smoke in the king's mansion. However, he made the same choice as Mengneng. This did not mean that the two of them had the same thoughts, but he did not dare to act rashly without a command. He was different from Mengneng. Mengneng was Zhu Huichuan's direct subordinate. At least he thought so. He was leading the Miao army. If he entered the city without a command, he would be punished severely. Thinking that it was better to avoid unnecessary trouble, he led the 10,000 soldiers and did not move. He only sent scouts into the city to gather information. He was also waiting for Zhu Huichuan's military order. Before this, he was optimistic that Zhu Huichun had already made arrangements. Even if the king's mansion was on fire, if he was not there, who would know who was burning? Back to Wang Zhanjiang. At this moment, he could not even protect himself. The development of the situation was completely out of his expectations. The king's mansion that was in charge of his security had rebelled. Not only that, even General Kai Wenju was killed in the chaos. Without the help of the king's mansion, more and more civilians rushed in front of his army. After a round of fighting, the number of soldiers under Wang Zhanjiang's command was constantly decreasing. Originally, there were close to 20,000 soldiers, but now, not even half of them were left. At this moment, even if he saw the king's mansion on fire, what else could he do? The three generals either did not help, waited, or were unable to protect themselves. This created enough time for Yang Qindong. The Langya team members checked one courtyard after another, getting closer and closer to Zhu Huichuan's secret entrance. In the secret underground room, Zhu Huichun did not have a radio, so he did not know what was happening outside. He was optimistic that as long as he wasn't caught by the five-star army, it wouldn't be long before the emperor's army appeared. Then, the prince's mansion would be taken back, and he would be safe. I did not expect this Yang Qindong to have a trick up his sleeve. He actually wants to catch me. Just you wait. After this king quells the chaos, I will definitely cut you into pieces. Even in the secret room, Zhu Huichun was still cursing Yang Qindong, venting his dissatisfaction. The only one standing at the side, Chun Tian, also had a look of resentment. However, he saw deeper than Zhu Huichun. He said fawningly, "Your Majesty, actually, it is not entirely a bad thing that the king's mansion is under attack. At least this Yang Qindong has revealed all his trump cards. Once our army surrounds the king's mansion, at that time, he will not have any tricks up his sleeves. He will really be at our mercy." "Ha, well said." Zhu Huichun burst into laughter after hearing these words. However, Chun Tian also expressed his worry. "Your Majesty, I am afraid that Yang Qindong will not be able to find your Majesty. In his desperation, will he vent his anger on the people in the king's mansion? He won't." On this point, Zhu Huichun was very confident. This was also the reason why he only brought Chun Tian to the secret room and did not bring his family. He said confidently, "If Yang Qindong dares to harm my family, then his reputation will be tarnished for thousands of years. In this way, he will have no place to turn over. Furthermore, if he can't find this king, what is the use of taking my family? There's no way he doesn't understand this." This was the current situation of the Great Ming Dynasty, or rather, the current situation of the Han people under the influence of Confucianism. Here, the emphasis was on not harming the family. Chapter 1583. For Yang Qindong to have such achievements today, even if he were to die now, history would record him in detail. After all, he had shown the might of the Han people, which was worthy of affirmation. On the other hand, if he really touched Zhu Huilio's family, he would be completely morally stained. If that really happened, he would not be able to rest in peace even if he died. His family and loved ones would be ashamed of it. It was because he had thought this through that Zhu Huilu was so confident. That's good. If that's the case, the king has nothing to worry about. The king will definitely win. Chun Tian was also relieved. He was really afraid that Yang Qindong would not be able to defeat the enemy and would act against the families of the three provincial kings. However, after thinking about it carefully, the advantages outweighed the disadvantages. As long as Yang Chendong still had a shred of rationality, he would not do such a thing. Hearing the slogan that the king will definitely win, Chun Tian laughed out loud. All right, let's see how Yang Chendong is captured alive or how he dies. Does he really think that he can turn the situation around after taking down the prince's mansion? This proves that he can't hold on any longer. This is just his last act of madness. He is definitely going to lose. Yang Chendong, who Zhu Huilu thought was going to lose, was currently sitting on the throne where Zhu Huilu sat, quietly listening to Tai Hu's report. Sixth young master, the 10,000 Miao soldiers outside the city did not act rashly because they did not receive any orders and did not know what was going on here. Actually, this is normal. However, why is that General Meng Ning also not moving? This is really hard to understand. Tai Hu looked as if he was asking for advice. After all, it was a rare opportunity to learn from Yang Chendong directly. Yang Chendong also thought highly of Tai Hu. If there was an opportunity to teach him, he would not be stingy. He first smiled, then said, "The development of everything in the world is not the same. Everyone has their own selfish motives. Obviously, this Meng Ning also has his own thoughts. Before figuring out why the prince's mansion was set on fire, he will not act rashly. I think he is afraid of falling into our ambush and wants to wait for the best price." But Zhu Huihua was his king. If his king was in trouble, shouldn't his subordinates immediately send troops to save him? Isn't he afraid that Zhu Huichun is really fine and will come back to settle old scores with him? Tai Hu still didn't understand. Yang Chendong said patiently, "If it were any other time, of course I would be scared. But now is the most chaotic time. Moreover, if Zhu Huiying is fine, then something must be wrong with this prince. If that is the case, Yang Xie will definitely be in chaos. If Zhu Huilu wants to take advantage of this opportunity to gain benefits, he must have people around him. Meng Ning knows this and knows that he is still valuable, so he is not afraid that Zhu Huilu will turn against him. So that's how it is." Tai Hu finally understood. Then he smiled and said, "But it's a pity that he doesn't know that not only is the sixth young master fine, but only a little over 100 of us from the special forces managed to take down the prince's residence. He's going to miss such a good opportunity to serve the emperor and perform well." That's right. Yang Chendong shared the same opinion. The prince's residence was not the courtyard he lived in. Because it was small, it was easy to defend. The prince's residence was big and had many walls. If Meng Nung led the army here, it would be impossible for him to defend this place. The best result would be for him to leave with his men. In this way, he would lose the chance to capture Zhu Huilu alive. It could be said that all his efforts would be in vain. However, Meng Nung did not seize this opportunity, which doomed the three provincial kings to defeat. While the two of them were still talking, the special forces on the other side were not idle. Other than leaving the necessary people to guard the three gates to prevent any accidents, the other members were carefully searching. Since Yang Chendong said that Zhu Huilu didn't run away, then he definitely wouldn't run away. As long as they searched carefully, they would definitely find the entrance to the secret passage. That would be the time for Wolf Fong to perform a meritorious service. Every member of the team was searching attentively, not wanting to leave any corner unturned. Among them, Skinny Monkey's movements were the fastest. Looking carefully, the members of Wolf Fong were all tall and strong. In comparison, Skinny Monkey, who weighed less than 50 kilograms, was an exception. However, not only did he become a member of Wolf Fong, but he was also the leader of Wolf Fong, Iron Tiger. This was because he had real skills in other aspects. For example, he was the one who entered the prince's residence to investigate. Relying on his small body, his Qigong was very good, and he was also very agile. He was very suitable for spying. His skills were not difficult, but he also knew a lot of unorthodox ways. One of them was tomb raiding. Before joining Wolf Fong, he had followed others to rob tombs because of his small body. For example, he could squeeze into some narrow places. For this reason, he was more familiar with the structure of the underground secret passage than the other members. He led a small team of 10 people to search one house after another. His hand tapped on the first floor to see if it was different from the other floors. In this way, in a short period of time, when the others only searched 2 or 3 houses, he had already searched 7 or 8 houses with this method. Finally, he stepped into the house at the secret entrance. This was a storage room, and there were all kinds of daily necessities inside. A room like this looked no different from any other room. However, under Skinny Monkey's leadership, everyone still carefully checked every inch of the room. When he finally came to the corner of the room, in front of a pile of salt, he suddenly stopped. A faintly discernible shoe print was right below the salt bag. If it wasn't for the light of the torch, he was afraid that this oversight would have directly swept past it. Has anyone been here before? Skinny Monkey squatted down and asked the other members. Someone must have pushed the door open to check, but no one would search this corner. One of the team members answered aloud. Hee, this is interesting. Skinny Monkey agreed with this answer. It was because of this that his eyes became brighter. Someone moved this salt bag away. Be careful. Skinny Monkey was their captain. After the captain gave the order, a member immediately came forward and moved the salt bag away, revealing a flat ground. Just from the appearance alone, it was impossible to tell that it was different from other places. If this is the entrance, it's really ingenious. The Skinny Monkey-like man smiled with great interest. Then, he leaned forward and gently knocked on the floor a few times. A few echoes sounded, making a slightly crisp sound. This sound was completely different from the dull sound of knocking on the ground. When this sound came out, Skinny Monkey's smile became wider. Then he said with a very confident tone, Go and call more people here. There's something here. This was also why Skinny Monkey was cautious. If the 3 provincial kings were really hiding here, in case there were any ambushes or traps, his group of 10 people was still too small. After Skinny Monkey gave the order, several groups of Special Forces members nearby rushed over. When the number of people reached 50, Skinny Monkey decisively got someone to find a heavy hammer and smashed it fiercely on the ground. He believed that there must be some kind of mechanism controlling this place, but he didn't have time to find it. He could only use the simplest method, violently smashing the door. Dang, 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 dang. Under the continuous smashing of the heavy hammer, a black hole with a diameter of nearly 1 meter appeared in front of everyone. At this moment, Skinny Monkey didn't need to say anything. A member suddenly jumped in and disappeared. In the underground secret room, Zhu Huiqi and Chen Tian were still talking about the outside world. From their conversation, they had already determined that the reinforcements were about to arrive, and they should be getting closer and closer to getting out. At this moment, a sound came out, causing Zhu Huiqi and Chen Tian's faces to gradually turn ugly. Obviously, they had thought of something, but before they could do anything, the crashing sound stopped, and a figure appeared in their sight. Then, the Skinny Monkey-like figure jumped down and came to Zhu Huiqi and Chen Tian. Skinny Monkey had naturally seen Zhu Huiqi and Chen Tian before. When he saw the 2 of them, he couldn't help but grin. Capturing the 2 of them would definitely be a great achievement. Skinny Monkey suddenly appeared in the underground secret room from the sky, giving Zhu Huiqi and Chen Tian a shock. They didn't think that someone would discover their underground secret room. It should take a long time and extraordinary ability to find them. Not to mention whether or not the 5-star army had such talents. They had only occupied the 3 provinces with a small number of soldiers. Now, they should be facing the various armies that came to rescue the emperor. How would they have the time to look for them? On the bright side, the 5-star army that occupied the prince's mansion should have been surrounded by the emperor's army, or even killed. But what was going on now? At this moment, both Zhu Huiqi and Chen Tian's faces were very ugly. Chen Tian even intentionally rubbed his eyes. Obviously, even now, he still didn't think that all of this was real. The 2 of you don't have to doubt. You are now our captives. Of course, you can resist, but the consequences, will be very serious. Skinny Monkey said as he took out the military knife in his hand and played with it. It was as if he was saying, if you dare to act rashly, I won't be polite. Both Zhu Huiqi and Chen Tian were smart people, so how could they resist at this moment? especially Zhu Huiqi. He was the king of 3 provinces and was also a member of the Zhu family. Even if he fell into Yang Qindong's hands, he wouldn't dare to hurt him. Chapter 1584. Just like what Yang Qindong thought before, as the people of the Great Ming Dynasty, they had their own pride. Perhaps it was because they had not come into contact with the outside world. They were simply short-sighted and narrow-minded. In the eyes of these people, the Great Ming Dynasty was the whole world. Anyone outside of the Great Ming Dynasty was a barbarian. They should look up to the Great Ming Dynasty, especially the people of the Zhu family, who were incomparably proud and arrogant. Even if Zhu Huiqian killed his brother, so what? That was their Zhu family's matter. Not to mention, he still had the title of the 3 kings. Based on this, as long as he didn't really rebel against the Great Ming Dynasty, even if he did something wrong, the emperor wouldn't do anything to him, let alone Bugnam of Gojoseon, who wouldn't dare to do anything to him. With this thought in mind, after a brief shock, Zhu Huiqian tidied up his robe and became arrogant again. Where is Bugnam of Gojoseon? This king wants to see him. Seeing that Zhu Huiqian had given up the intention to resist, the skinny monkey-like man immediately laughed, turned around, and said, "Then please." When Zhu Huiqian reappeared in the main hall of the king's mansion, he was no longer the king, but a prisoner. Yang Qindong sat on the throne that Zhu Huiqian was supposed to sit on and looked down. This made the 3 provincial kings very uncomfortable when they entered the hall. Cough, Bugnam of Gojoseon. This king admits defeat in your hands this time. Say, what do you want? Of course, this prince will consider giving Yunnan province to you, but that's all. As for Guizhou and Guangxi, they will still belong to this prince. This is the biggest concession I can make. You should also know that the Southern Ming Dynasty will not agree to more. After entering the main hall, Zhu Huiqian said to Yang Qindong in a warning tone, giving people the feeling that Bugnam of Gojoseon had taken advantage of him. He. Yang Qindong couldn't help but laugh out loud. At this time, Zhu Huiqian still wanted to use the Southern Ming Empire to suppress him. Such a person's mind was completely corrupted by the Great Ming Empire. If it was described in Yang Qindong's words, then it was hopeless. Zhu Huiyan didn't know about this. Seeing Yang Qindong laughing, he thought that the other party was very satisfied with this result. He couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief. No matter what, he was still a prisoner. Although he believed that with the Southern Ming Empire as his backing and his surname being Zhu, Yang Qindong wouldn't have the guts to do anything to him. However, this was his own opinion. Who knew if this person would go crazy and suddenly attack him? Others might not know what kind of person he was in Nanming's eyes, but how could he not know? He killed his brothers and forced the Southern Ming Empire to make him the king of 3 provinces. It was hard to say that Zhu Qizhen didn't have any thoughts at all. Perhaps he could borrow Yang Qindong's hand to kill him, and Zhu Qizhen might even be happy. All right, since that's the case, please send someone to send this prince out of the city. Don't worry, since this prince has lost this time, I will admit defeat. I won't send anyone to seize Yunnan province. Zhu Huiyan thought that he had the upper hand and spoke with a magnanimous look. What he didn't know was that after these words, Yang Qindong couldn't help but laugh out loud again. When Chun Tian heard this laughter, his expression changed drastically. He had dealt with Yang Qindong more than once or twice, and he had never really gained any advantage. He didn't think that the other party would let things go so easily now that he had the initiative. Your Majesty, please don't say anymore. Chun Tian felt that something was wrong. He stretched out his right hand and gently tugged on Zhu Huiyun's sleeve as he reminded him softly, "HM, what's going on?" Zhu Huiyun also felt that something was wrong, but he couldn't figure it out. There was no need for Zhu Huiyun to figure it out because Yang Qindong had already opened his mouth and said, "Let you go? Zhu Huiyun, has your brain been eaten by a dog? Can't you see the situation clearly at this time?" Yang Qindong, how can you say that? I'm a member of the imperial family with the surname Zhu, and I'm also the Southern Ming Emperor's king of the 3 provinces. How can you slander me here? Are you not afraid of angering the Southern Ming dynasty and sending an army to destroy you? When he spoke to this point, Zhu Huiyun's voice unconsciously dropped a lot. In terms of righteousness, Yang Qindong was a subject of the Great Ming Dynasty. However, in reality, the current Yang Xie was already many times stronger than the Great Ming Dynasty. It was just that some people were unwilling to admit it. Then there was the problem. Even if Yang Qindong really did something to Zhu Huiyun, what did he do? Would the Southern Ming Dynasty start a war with Yang Xie because of this matter? Not to mention whether they could win or not. In the eyes of the Southern Ming Dynasty, Zhu Huiyun was not someone to be trifled with. He was not much different from traitor. They probably wanted the two of them to fight. So how could they meddle in other people's business? This was also the reason why Zhu Huiyun's voice was getting softer and softer. After saying this, his aura was no longer as strong as before. Seeing that Zhu Huiyun had become more obedient, Yang Qindong began to flip out. Zhu Huiyun, who do you think you are? If you didn't have a good family, what are you now? For power, you even killed your own brother and brother. Aren't you afraid that you won't be able to enter your ancestral grave after death? Aren't you afraid that they are waiting for you on the ground with resentment? Zhu Huiyun, this time, you invited this king to discuss matters. You said that as long as this king came and expressed his sincerity, you would give the 3 provinces to this king. You also said that this would prevent the people of the 3 provinces from experiencing the flames of war. Look, you make it sound so nice, but what is the truth? When Yang Qindong said the word, his voice raised by more than 2 octaves. Because of this, Zhu Huiyun's body trembled and his head lowered even more. However, Yang Qindong had no intention of letting him off easily. He continued to say, the truth is, ever since this king entered Yunnan Manor, you have always wanted to kill this king. You launched fierce attacks again and again. If it weren't for this king's strong warriors, I'm afraid that this king would be dead by now and end up like your brother and brother. Since you wanted to kill this prince, and now you've been captured by this prince, then tell me, do you think this matter will be resolved so easily? What do you want to do? Don't tell me you still want to harm this king? Hearing this, Zhu Huiyun could no longer be an ostrich. Harm you? You don't deserve it. Yang Qindong shook his head, then said in a resolute and unquestionable tone, what's the difference between killing you and killing an ant? When the time comes, this king only needs to tell the world that you were afraid because you did something wrong and committed suicide in the king's mansion. I'm sure this result will convince a lot of people and make many people believe it. At that time, tell me, who will care about a dead person? No. Zhu Huiyun's face changed drastically. It was not wrong for him to like power. In order to obtain power, he would do anything and kill countless people. However, this did not mean that he was not afraid of death. Killing others and being killed by others were 2 completely different concepts and results. What's wrong? Are you afraid? Seeing Zhu Huiyun's pale face, Yang Qindong knew that he had warned him enough. Next, it was time to ask for the result, which was what he wanted to know the most. Compared to this result, Zhu Huiyun's life and death really did not matter to him. He was just a king with the surname Zhu in the Great Ming Dynasty. In today's Great Ming Dynasty, there were dozens, if not hundreds, of kings like him. However, many of the kings were just in name. Not many people had the military power of 3 provinces, like Zhu Huiyun. So what if he had the military power of 3 provinces? For Yang Qindong, who had already occupied Eastern Europe, the grasslands, Southeast Asia, and Central Asia, these 3 provinces had never been in his eyes. Zhu Huiyun, this king just wants to tell you that killing you is like killing an ant to this king. It's not a problem at all. Of course, if you can cooperate with this king and tell me everything you know, this king can still consider sparing your life. Yang Qindong threw out an olive branch, but Zhu Huiyun did not immediately agree. He was still wondering if Yang Qindong was trying to scare him. Without getting an answer immediately, Yang Qindong's eyes flashed with anger. Then his gaze fell on Beta Persei beside him. The two had been together for many years and had already formed a certain tacit understanding. Beta Persei nodded, then strode into the hall and came to Zhu Huiyun's side. Without any explanation, he raised his hand and slashed down. An arm fell in the hall, and a wail from the bottom of his heart sounded. "Ah, it hurts, it hurts." The voice came from Chun Tian's mouth. The slash just now had cut off his left arm. This sudden slash was completely out of Zhu Huiyun's expectations. When he saw the bloody arm falling at his feet, he instinctively jumped to the side, but at the same time, cold sweat began to flow from his forehead unknowingly. After Beta Persei swung his sword, his gaze fell on Zhu Huiyun, as if to say, "What do you think? Do you want me to slash you too?" Although Beta Persei did not say anything, everything was just a warning from his eyes. But Zhu Huiyun did not dare to take the risk. He immediately shouted, "Don't kill me, don't kill me. Bugnama Gojosian, whatever you want to ask, I'll say it, I'll say it." In fear and horror, Zhu Huiyun did not even have the courage to call himself his king. Yang Qindong smiled with satisfaction and said, "This prince will give you a chance. Tell me about Mo Gue. Who is his master?" Mo Gue nodded. Yang Qindong didn't know what to say, but he didn't know what to say. Chapter 1585. Compared to the external threat, Yang Qindong was more concerned about the traitor. He wouldn't be able to sleep peacefully until the traitor was eliminated. Now that Mo Gue was dead, the only person who had interacted with him was Zhu Huiyun. He had to get an answer from this person. With Chun Tian's missing arm in front of him, Zhu Huiyun naturally answered all the questions. However, he knew very little about Mo Gue, but he didn't dare to not answer, nor did he dare to speak carelessly. He could only give a detailed account of the first time he met Mo Gue and the last time he met him. An hour passed. When he was done, Zhu Huiyun spread his hands and said, "I only know that there is a mysterious force supporting Mo Gue. As for who it is, I really don't know." Yang Qindong naturally believed him. He didn't expect Zhu Huiyun to be so careful. Mo Gue had never mentioned the identity of his master. He originally thought that he would be able to find traces of his master. Now it seemed impossible. However, even though he believed that Zhu Huiyun wouldn't lie to him, it didn't mean that he wouldn't ask more. Chun Tiangong's bleeding had been stopped, and Yang Qindong had put the same problem on him. Chun Tian didn't know as much as Zhu Huiyun. However, in order not to get hurt again, he told Zhu Huiyun everything he knew. The fact proved that Zhu Huiyun wasn't lying. This result made Yang Qindong unhappy. There were still no clues about the traitor. Yang Qindong could only put it aside. Now that things had come to this, it was better to solve the problem of the three provinces first. Zhu Huiyun's capture meant that the overall situation was settled. Now it was time to tie up the loose ends. Chun Tian, I'll give you a mission. If you complete it well, you can live. If you don't need to keep your other arm. Chun Tian's face was still pale because he had lost too much blood and also because he was scared. After knowing that Yang Qindong was daring and did not take him seriously, Chun Tian became as obedient as a dog and said, "Please instruct me, Bugnam of Gojosian." Satisfied with Chun Tian's performance, Yang Qindong said, "I now order you to be this king's envoy. Go and meet General Meng Nung and persuade him to surrender." The prince's mansion was on fire, followed by thick smoke. This was a call for help. Everyone who saw this scene had different thoughts. However, there was one person who wanted to go back to help, but he no longer had the ability to do so. This person was General Wang Zhanjiang. Wang Zhanjiang was a typical general of the Great Ming Dynasty. He had a foolishly loyal heart. In his eyes, she had received Zhu Huiyun's kindness, so she was his person in life and his ghost in death. Therefore, he was more anxious than anyone else when he saw that the Wang residence was in trouble. However, with the black cavalry firing their muskets on the inside and the traitorous soldiers and civilians on the outside, he was caught in the middle and was in a dilemma. If he couldn't even protect himself, how could he save others? Charge, send everyone. No matter what, we have to rush into the small courtyard. As long as we capture Bugnam of Gojosian, everything will be solved. Wang Zhanjiang thought of the simplest way to solve everything. which was to capture Yang Qindong alive and then use him to exchange for the three provinces' king. Wang Zhanjiang gave orders like a madman, then led the army to charge. Under his lead, the remaining 10,000 soldiers of the three provinces' army rushed toward the small courtyard like a tide. Even though they were constantly hit by firearms and fell to the ground in the process of charging, the tide of people was still like a wave without stopping. The power of firearms was greater in deterrence. When the opponents came without regard for their lives, the Black Cavalry, which had less than 500 people, finally felt a strong pressure. Second brother, we can't go on like this. Let's break through. Dao Xiao hurriedly came to Beta Persei's side to ask for instructions. Up until now, the Black Cavalry soldiers' arms were sore, numb, and swollen. Anyone who had been in the military or had experience with guns would know that shooting a gun was a very physically taxing thing. The continuous gunshots were also a test of the human body's physical fitness. This was because the Black Cavalry soldiers had better physical fitness. If it were an ordinary person, they would have been unable to shoot because their arms could not bear the force. A small number of the 500 Black Cavalry soldiers were injured, but most of them had reached their physical limits, especially when their arms were numb and they could no longer shoot. Even if they forced themselves to hold the gun, they had already lost their aim. Then let's break through. Beta Persei was also a little surprised by the stubbornness of the three provinces' army. But fortunately, the young master was no longer here, so he did not have to stay here and not move. Organize those who can still shoot and let them be responsible for covering the retreat of the others. We'll break through to the east. After Beta Persei gave the order, those who were supposed to set up the booby traps did so. The soldiers who were supposed to retreat also lined up, and the injured soldiers were supported by their comrades to the east. Beta Persei's decision was very decisive and caught the three provinces' army off guard. The east side was the main target of the attack, and a hole was quickly opened. Beta Persei and the others took the opportunity to leave. General Wang Zhanjiang, who was left behind, finally rushed into the small courtyard with the soldiers. Quick, surround this place. Don't let a single one escape. Finally, he rushed into the small courtyard. At this moment, Wang Zhanjiang's face was full of excitement. He seemed to see the scene of capturing Yang Qindong alive, and then saving Zhu Huaituan, becoming the first hero. Boom, boom, boom. Boom, boom, boom. The booby traps left behind were triggered, causing a series of explosions. Hundreds of soldiers from the three provinces' army were killed or injured by the explosions. But Wang Zhanjiang did not care about all of this. In his eyes, all of this was just the Black Cavalry's last resistance. Quick, charge in. They don't have any power to resist. Charge in, other than Wunan Wang. Kill everyone else. Kill them all. After losing so many people, he could finally get his revenge. Wang Zhanjiang had been suppressing his anger for a long time, but it was destined that his idea would not come true. When Wang Zhanjiang rushed into the small courtyard with the soldiers from the three provinces, he saw that there was no one there. Not to mention Yang Qindong's figure, there was not even a corpse of a dead 5-star army soldier. What's going on? Faced with this result, Wang Zhanjiang felt his mind go blank. He could not understand why this was happening. Reality did not give him more time to think, because soon after, a soldier came to report that the courtyard was surrounded by the rebel army and civilians. In other words, they were now the prey and had nowhere to run. How many people do we have left? Wang Zhanjiang's face changed when he heard that they were surrounded. But he did not give up on the idea of breaking out. As long as he still had his strength, there was still a chance for him to break out. General, we only have about 3,000 people left. This answer made Wang Zhanjiang's face change. Then, like a zombie that had its energy sucked out of his body, he fell to the ground with a plop. He knew that this time, it was completely over. Nearly 15,000 soldiers fought with no regard for their lives and did not care about the heavy losses. Until now, there were only about 3,000 people left. On the contrary, there were more than 20,000 rebels and civilians outside. He knew that this was a complete failure. Wang Zhanjiang did not believe that the 3,000 people he brought with him would have the strength of the Black Cavalry to be able to break out of the heavy encirclement. The general had lost his fighting spirit and hope. The other soldiers looked at each other and also lost their fighting spirit. Some of them even looked at Wang Zhanjiang and were ready to make a move. It was every man for himself, and it was time for him to fight for himself. A few hours later, around noon, the soldiers under Wang Zhanjiang's command rebelled, and he was killed in the courtyard. No one would have thought that the place that was supposed to be Yang Qindong's burial ground would become Wang Zhanjiang's burial ground. With Wang Zhanjiang's death, the remaining soldiers from the 3 provinces abandoned their weapons and surrendered. They were taken over by Cheng Hu's soldiers and civilians. This was not the only piece of good news. Chen Tian also brought Meng Ning over. After learning that the 5-star army could keep him and his family alive, and that he could keep 10% of the wealth for his own use, Meng Ning chose to surrender. The exception was the 10,000 Miao soldiers outside the city. Under the leadership of Miao King Wu Ying II, they escaped in advance. Clearly, he also saw that the situation was turning for the worse. However, considering the various conflicts he had with the 5-star army, he did not believe that the other party would let him off so easily. Thus, he chose to flee, choosing to head to the Chuxiong Manor to meet up with General Luo Guan, Brigadier General Rajiv, Azad, Hack, and the others. In just one night, Yunnan Manor changed hands. The original owner, Zhu Huihua, became a prisoner, and Yang Qindong, who was surrounded and killed, became the owner here. Beta Persei rushed to Yang Qindong with a telegram and reported, "Young master, the latest news is that 80,000 enemies have appeared in the west of the city. They are heading towards Yunnan Manor. If there are no accidents, they will reach the west wall in 2 hours." Previously, Beta Persei led the Black Cavalry to break out of the encirclement and then met up with Commander Cheng Hu and the others who were outside. Then, he came to the 3 provinces and walked to Yang Qindong's side. It was also because of Beta Persei's timely breakout that the Black Cavalry did not suffer any major losses. After a few days of fighting, the 500 Black Cavalry only lost 3 people in battle and more than 20 were injured. Most of the soldiers were just overly tired. Once they had enough time to rest, they would immediately be full of energy. 80,000. After Yang Qindong heard this, his expression did not change. He knew that this was the last force that Zhu Huihua left in Yunnan province. There is nothing to be afraid of against an enemy that had no backup. As long as they defended the city and stabilized the situation, victory would eventually be theirs. Chapter 1586. How many people can we mobilize? Yang Qindong asked Beta Persei, thinking that they would need an army to defend the city. "Young master, we have about 40,000 soldiers at our disposal. Among them, 30,000 are surrendered soldiers. However, not many of them are capable of fighting. There are also several tens of thousands of commoners. If we call upon them, they can also go up the tower to help." Hearing this answer, Yang Qindong knew that it would not be easy to rely on these people to defend the city. So he continued to ask, "Where are our reinforcements?" The closest one is the 20,000 reinforcements led by Yao Yingjun. They have already arrived at Chujing Prefecture in the northeast. They will arrive before noon tomorrow. The fastest one is the world's first cavalry army. They have already passed Yuanjiang Prefecture. If there are no accidents, they will arrive tomorrow night. There are also the other main reinforcements. They will arrive in about 2 to 4 days. Beta Persei reported to Yang Qindong with the timetable calculated by Wang Shan. "So, we can only rely on ourselves from today until noon tomorrow?" When Yang Qindong said this, the corner of his mouth trembled slightly. He thought to himself, "This is good. Let the people here see the cruelty of war, and let them know that peace is not easy to come by. Beta Persei, go find Yang San and Commander Cheng Hu. Send out all the surrendered soldiers from the 3 provinces, as well as the civilians who can go up the city. Let them go up the city. Don't be afraid of spending money, and don't be afraid of dying. It is time to let some people see the benefits of joining Yang Xie." Yang Qindong said as if he had made some kind of decision. Beta Persei nodded heavily. He already understood Yang Qindong's meaning and knew what to do. With this order, the entire Yunnan prefecture became busy again. Yang San, who had been hiding in the dark, also appeared in front of everyone with a group of secret agents. They began to mobilize the civilians to go up the city tower to defend the city. It must be said that the three provinces were ruled by the three provinces' king, Zhu Huifeng, and many soldiers were recruited over the years. However, most of them were recruited to recruit able-bodied men. It was completely different from Yongsan's recruitment process, where anyone who agreed to go up the tower to defend the city would be given silver. When the shining piles of silver were placed under the city gates, the enthusiasm of the citizens surged. It was said that money could move the gods. Now it seemed that it was true. Under the temptation of the silver, more and more civilians joined the army to defend the city. Among them were some middle-aged men over 40 years old. Normally, when the three provinces' kings were looking for able-bodied men, they would not be the target. But when there was silver to be taken, they actually took the initiative to join the army. The notice, the soldiers, the soldiers, the soldiers, the soldiers who were the soldiers, they were the soldiers who were the soldiers. It was clearly written that the soldiers only needed to hold on until noon the next day. Once the reinforcements from the five-star army arrived, they would be considered to have completed their mission. Furthermore, they would not need to return the silver to the person who completed the mission. In the end, it was just one day. Every person who joined the army would be able to receive 5 taels of silver. To the commoners, this was no different from a pie falling from the sky. As a poor commoner, there were naturally not many people who would reject such an opportunity. The result of the recruitment was far beyond the expectations of Beta Persei, Yang San, and the others. When they saw that there were 40,000 civilians, as well as the surrendered soldiers, they all joined the mission to defend the city because of the silver. When the number of soldiers expanded to 80,000, they reported this to Yang Qindong. "Hey, do you see that? This is the strength of the civilians. Think about how ridiculous it is for those who treat the civilians as ants." Yang Qindong said with emotion. Then, he handed the command of the defense to Beta Persei. Yang San was in charge of logistics. Beta Persei was naturally excited when he received the command of the defense. First, he found Cheng Hu and the soldiers of Lung Feng's 1st Army, 1st Division, and 1st Regiment, and made them the backbone of the army. After a simple distribution of 80,000 soldiers, he went up the city gate tower and waited for the enemy to appear so that they could fight. Miao King Wu Ingtu saw that the situation was not good and fled. It was in the process of retreating that he encountered Yunnan's great general Luo Guan and 40,000 soldiers of the original Gala army. At that moment, 80,000 of them gathered together and headed straight for Yunnan Manor. And this was the power in the open. In the dark, Shiping King Mubin also led 10,000 soldiers to the foot of Yunnan Manor. Ever since he received the message that Zhu Huichun had begun to attack Yang Qindong 3 days ago, Shiping King Mubin could not sit still. Thinking that when 2 tigers fought, one of them would definitely be injured, and with the intention of benefiting from the fight, he led the 10,000 elite soldiers of the West Pacifying Army to travel day and night. Finally, they arrived outside the Southern Cloud Prefecture city without alerting anyone. Having lived in Yunnan Manor for generations, he knew the terrain like the back of his hand. He knew where the paths were and where the rivers were. It was because of this advantage that even Yang Xie's intelligence department did not know about the appearance of the Shiping army. It had to be said that this was the advantage of being a local snake. After arriving outside Yunnan Manor without anyone knowing, the scouts sent out found out that the 3 provincial armies were about to arrive at the city gates. The 5-star army in the city was also actively guarding against them. So the war is about to start. Then we just have to wait. Hearing the news, Mubin quickly suppressed his intention to take action. As for the missing Zhu Huichun, the 3 provinces' king, he did not care at all. Without the king of the 3 provinces, Southern Cloud Prefecture would be his lair. If he had been actively defending himself all these years, he might have been able to fight against the five-star army. It was all because of this person that his plan was delayed. Mubin did not have a good impression of Zhu Huichun. This was a typical shirking of responsibility. If he could not do something well, he would always find all kinds of excuses to blame others. This was also a sign of irresponsibility. Yunnan Manor was currently heavily guarded. It was not a suitable time for him to attack. Sheeping King could wait. He was like a venomous snake in a dark corner. When the time was right, he would open his mouth and bite to achieve his goal. As for Luo Guan's troops, a group of 80,000 soldiers rushed over. Finally, they arrived outside the west city of Yunnan Manor just after noon. Then, the army got into formation. Perhaps they had also received news that the five-star army's reinforcements were on their way. They did not have time to build catapults. They only took out some siege ladders. As the war drums of the three armies beat, they got into formation to attack the city. On the west city tower of Yunnan Manor, the surrendered soldiers and civilians looked at the mighty three provinces army that was in formation outside the city. Everyone had a bitter expression. Previously, they were tempted by the money that made them forget everything and join the army. However, when they saw the huge formation of the enemy, they realized that it was not easy to get the money. However, since he had received the money, he had to do something. Otherwise, even if the three provincial armies didn't attack the city, the inspection team arranged by the five-star army in the city wouldn't let him off. Forget it. Let's do it. There are so many of us. Let's not be afraid. Even if they could not figure it out, the soldiers had to think it through. When they saw so many of their comrades standing around them, they could only cheer themselves up. This was also the thought of many of the soldiers guarding the city. Beta Persei and Yang Sen also saw this scene. Yang Sen laughed and said to Beta Persei, "Second brother, it seems that the morale of your soldiers is a little low. They're all new recruits. Many of them have not even seen blood. It's not a big deal for them to behave like this." Beta Persei said magnanimously. Although the morale of his 80,000 soldiers was indeed low, Beta Persei was not worried that the three provinces' army outside the city would attack the city. After all, the military strength of both sides was basically equal. In addition, they were the ones defending the city, so they had a natural advantage. Among the soldiers, they were the backbone of the Cold Front Regiment. The other party did not have heavy weapons to attack the city. No matter how he looked at it, his side had too much of an advantage. Seeing how confident Beta Persei was, Yang Sen was not worried anymore. After reminding him that the sword had no eyes, he went down the city tower to prepare food. Zhu Huiwa had done some good things. For example, there was a lot of food stored in the city's warehouse. This was originally for his recruitment and independence, but now it was all given to Yang San. With these things, he could make incomparably delicious food. Presumably, under the stimulation of delicious food, the morale of the soldiers should also be improved. Okay, go and prepare more meat. I will use this to encourage the soldiers. Beta Persei naturally knew the importance of food to the soldiers. He smiled and sent Yang San away. Then he ordered someone to call Cheng Hu and instructed him that if the city tower was in danger, the backbone of the Cold Front Regiment would have to personally come out and kill the enemies on top of the city. Second brother, don't worry. It's only because the sixth young master didn't allow firearms. Otherwise, we wouldn't even need these people. Our Cold Front Regiment alone is enough to defend the city without losing it. If it's done well, we can even launch a counterattack. Cheng He replied confidently. Haha, I know your Cold Front Regiment is powerful. However, the sixth young master also wants these people to see blood. Sometimes, no amount of education is as good as experiencing it yourself. So, let's not use firearms. Unless the situation is out of our control, tell the soldiers that no one is to use firearms. Beta Persei, of course, knew how powerful the Cold Front Regiment was. This regiment, which was called the typical regiment by the outside world, was only second to the Black Cavalry in terms of combat ability. The city tower was ready. The soldiers of the three provinces outside the city also launched their attack. They already knew that the defenders were made up of surrendered soldiers and ordinary civilians. There were no real elite forces like the five-star army. This made them feel relieved. Chapter 1587. The five-star army had fought battles all over the country and had already made a great name for themselves. If it was the 80,000 five-star army here, they would have already fled without even fighting. However, the 80,000 surrendered soldiers and commoners were completely different. In their eyes, they were a proper army. If they couldn't even defeat these five-star army, then all their training would have been in vain. Therefore, when they charged, the might of the three provinces' army was still very fierce. They didn't care about the arrows that were shot down from the city tower. They charged up the city walls with minimal losses, then set up countless scaling ladders and began to attack the city. Commoners who hadn't been trained could only shoot arrows. As for how far they could shoot and whether they could hit people, it was still too extravagant. Therefore, in the first wave of counterattack, the defending side didn't perform well. It wasn't until they saw countless scaling ladders on the city tower that countless enemies began to climb up with the help of the scaling ladders. When some of them were about to charge up, the defending soldiers became afraid. They didn't dare to imagine how many of them could survive in close combat. Don't panic. Take the prepared sleepers and throw them down. Quick! Chung, who was in charge of commanding the front lines, seeing the enemy attack so smoothly, he couldn't help but shout out anxiously. Under his shout, Feng Zhan, Wang Jinlong, Su Digang, Hu Jun, Sun Dawei, and the other battalion commanders hid in the crowd and played their roles. Countless sleepers were thrown down from the city tower, smashing into the heads or bodies of the soldiers of the three provinces who were climbing up with the help of the scaling ladders. One by one, black figures fell from the sky and let out miserable cries. The sleepers' attack disintegrated the first wave of attacks of the three provinces' army. After throwing down over 1,000 corpses, the three provinces' army had no choice but to retreat. The first wave of attacks of the enemy was defeated so easily. The cheers of tens of thousands of people could be heard from the city tower. Obviously, the victory came so quickly that it greatly exceeded the expectations of the defending soldiers, especially the commoners. They were originally a little nervous, but now they realized that the battle wasn't as difficult as they thought. Their confidence began to swell, and their morale began to rise. However, the experienced officers like Chung, who did not let down their guard. They knew that this was just a probing attack by the enemy, and the bitter battle was still to come. Despite the failure of the first wave of attacks, the soldiers of the three provinces did not show any signs of low morale. It was just a probing attack. This was a common tactic. He really didn't know why the civilians guarding the city were cheering so enthusiastically. Those who didn't know would think that the enemy had eliminated their main force. That's enough. You've all seen it just now. The soldiers guarding the city have mediocre combat strength. The arrows they shot were weak and powerless. This kind of army can't possibly be a match for our elite regular army. So, from now on, I ask everyone to buck up and unleash your strongest combat strength. As the one who led the most troops, Rajiv undoubtedly became the leader of the crowd. He looked at the other generals as he spoke, as if his words were military orders. Of these 80,000 men, Rajiv led 30,000 men, Luo Guan led 20,000 men, and Azad, Hak, and Wu Yingtu led 10,000 men each. Thus, they managed to gather an army of 80,000, forming a sizable force. Because his country, Bangra, had already been destroyed by the five-star army, and his country had also announced its surrender. At this moment, Rajiv was already homeless. Now, he had no way to escape except to trust the king of the three provinces, Zhu Huihua. Until now, he still didn't know that Zhu Huihua had been captured by Yang Chendong. He still wanted to rush into Yunnan Prefecture, drive the five-star army out of here, and then find Zhu Huihua as soon as possible. Then, both sides would cooperate. This way, he would have a place to live. All of this was due to Rajiv's own thoughts. As the king of the three provinces, even if he couldn't beat the enemy, he still had a way to save his life. Perhaps Zhu Huihua was now hiding in a corner of Yunnan Prefecture, waiting for him to rescue him. The generals were now homeless. Only by uniting could they form a joint force and not be easily bullied. It was under such circumstances that Rajiv took the initiative to stand up. No one had any doubts and were willing to listen to his command. Now that Rajiv had given the order, everyone knew that under the current situation, they could only survive by taking down Yunnan Prefecture and saving Zhuhuiwa. Therefore, no one had any objections and agreed to this decision. When the force was concentrated in one place, it was still very powerful. When the army launched another siege, it was no longer a probing move. Instead, it was a real assault. More and more soldiers rushed to the city walls and began to climb up using scaling ladders. More and more wooden sleepers were thrown down. This was not the first time they had used these ladders. Not good. The pillows are useless. After throwing out the wooden sleepers, many people found that the effect was not as good as they had expected. Although the three provincial armies also suffered casualties, they did not retreat. Instead, they continued to climb up the ladder. Many people began to panic. Don't panic, throw down the kerosene. Feng Zhan and the others in the crowd looked at the performance of the people and sighed. Fortunately, they were not soldiers under their command. Otherwise, they would have trained them well and let them know how red the flowers were. With this shout, countless kerosene was poured down from the sky and poured on the soldiers of the three provinces who were still under the ladders. Waves of mournful screams were heard. The siege, which had been going smoothly, could not help but stagnate. This was a real siege in ancient times. Without powerful heavy weapons like cannons, every time they wanted to attack a city, they would have to pay a heavy price. With the help of the kerosene, the three provinces were once again defeated. The people on the city wall could not help but cheer again. The two consecutive victories made them look down on their opponents again. However, what they did not know was that both the kerosene and the pillows were auxiliary weapons to defend the city. In the end, if they wanted to defend the city, they still needed to rely on force. As expected, after a short break, the third siege began. This time, neither the sleepers nor the kerosene were intimidated by the soldiers of the three provinces. A small number of them began to rush up the city walls. For the first time, the two sides engaged in close-range combat. Because the three provinces were the ones attacking the city, there were not many soldiers who rushed up the city wall tower. In the end, they were all beaten down by the people and the surrendered soldiers. If not for this, in a one-on-one battle, the defending side would have lost. After a few consecutive charges, both sides suffered losses. When the sky turned dark, the two sides temporarily stopped fighting. They began to eat and accumulate strength. Yang San, the chief steward in charge of logistics, came. Under his leadership and organization, countless women in the city got busy. They prepared a large amount of delicious food and sent it to the city gate tower. There were fresh soup and meatballs, which really filled the soldiers' stomachs. Everyone, eat your fill. There's plenty of food. Only when you are full will you have the strength to fight. When we win, everyone will be heroes. There will be even more delicious food waiting for you. Yang San ordered people to carry the food up while encouraging everyone. The fragrance of the meat spread in all directions. When the soldiers smelled it, they involuntarily swallowed their saliva. All these years, it was said that the Southern Ming dynasty ruled this place. However, in reality, Zhu Huixin, who held the military power, was the real ruler. He was a person who only had ambition and political means. He did not have the slightest idea of developing the economy. Under Zhu Huixin's rule, food had to be imported from Yangtze most of the time. It was easy to imagine what kind of life the people here were living. It was not an exaggeration to say that every year when spring came, even the tree bark would be gnawed off. Under such circumstances, it was easy to imagine the lives of the people. Not to mention eating meat, they had not even eaten rice for a long time. Now that the meatballs were brought up, whether it was the surrendered soldiers or the people, their eyes lit up. If not for the cold front soldiers watching from the side, they would have reached out to snatch them. Don't worry, don't worry. Everyone has a share. Everyone has a share. Yang San chuckled and ordered basin after basin of delicious food to be brought up to the tower and placed in front of everyone. Food for tens of thousands of people was definitely a considerable amount. Fortunately, there were enough women in the city. When Yang San said that he was willing to help cook and provide a full meal, there weren't too many applicants. Almost half of the women in the city came over. With the help of these people, the cooking was naturally not difficult. In the end, they requisitioned a lot of iron pots and basins before they barely completed the task. When the delicacies were brought up, the sound of people eating could be heard everywhere. The sound of people smacking their lips was very satisfying and made them feel incomparably hungry. On the tower, the fragrance of the meat was carried by the wind and drifted to the barracks of the 3 provinces. Immediately, the sound of people swallowing their saliva was heard. Even General Rajiv's face darkened at this moment. This is simply a provocation. They are showing off. Rajiv stood up and looked at the tower of Yunnan Manor with a fierce face. He lowered his head and looked at the dry rations and the clear water he was eating. He was in a bad mood. Don't eat anymore. Prepare to charge. Tell the soldiers that there is delicious food waiting for us in Yunnan Manor. As long as we capture the city, there will be meat to eat. Rajiv angrily ordered the army to continue attacking the city. The movements of the 3 provinces under the tower were quickly seen by the soldiers on the tower. Curses immediately sounded. Damn it, they actually don't want us to eat properly. These bastards. I haven't eaten my fill yet, and they are coming. Are they rushing to their deaths? Chapter 1588. Cutting off my food supply is the same as killing me. Come, watch how I chop off your heads and kick them like a chamber pot. On the city tower, more and more soldiers expressed their dissatisfaction. In an instant, the crowd was enraged, and the soldiers' morale rose by a few steps. Looking at this scene, Yang Sen chuckled and immediately said, "Everyone, don't be anxious. Fight well. There will be supper delivered in the middle of the night. However, everyone must defend and not let the enemy attack. Otherwise, not only will there be no food to eat, even the safety of your family in the city will not be guaranteed." Hearing that there would be supper at night, many soldiers immediately felt their bodies were filled with energy. One by one, they shouted, "Don't worry, with us here, we will defend our home. With this meal, our lives will be sold to the 5-star army. Yes, we will definitely defend the city with our lives and not let the 3 provincial armies take a step forward. Defend Yunnan Manor with our lives and kill all the enemies. Defend Yunnan Manor and kill all the enemies." On the city tower, the morale of the soldiers was even higher. Under such circumstances, the 3 provincial armies launched a siege. One could imagine what the outcome would be. In the following process of the charge, the soldiers of the 3 provinces truly experienced what it meant to change. It felt as if their opponent had suddenly changed. After countless of their comrades had died in battle, Yunnan Manor still stood in front of them without any signs of wavering. After a night of fierce battle, the 3 provincial armies showed a trace of fatigue. Originally, they thought that after their 80,000-strong army arrived at Yunnan Manor, they would be able to easily take down the city. After all, the news said that Yang Qindong only brought 500 black cavalry with him. Even if they had enviable firearms in their hands, this small number of people was only enough for them to protect themselves. Who would have thought that after fighting until now, not only had they not taken down Yunnan Manor, they had not even seen the person in charge. Their opponents were just some surrendered soldiers who had no choice but to, in addition to some ordinary citizens in the city and the older ones. This kind of blow really made Rajiv and the others a little disappointed. They even began to doubt their own fighting strength. What's going on? How is it that Yang Qindong is able to unleash such powerful combat prowess? General Luo Guan asked in the main tent with a puzzled expression. Since it wasn't that his combat power wasn't good enough, then he could just find another reason to blame it all on Yang Qindong's command. This was a very good choice. No one knew how to answer this question. The morale of the people in the tent began to plummet. In fact, things were not as bad as they had imagined. As the defenders of the city, they had also paid a heavy price. After an afternoon and a night of intensive attacks, more than 10,000 surrendered soldiers were killed or injured. The civilians were even worse off. The number of casualties reached 20,000. This was the difference between untrained and trained. Those who had been trained would naturally be able to borrow strength and cooperate with each other. Those who had not been trained would only rely on their brute strength. If it weren't for Lung Feng's occasional attacks on the city walls, the city might not have been able to defend itself. Of course, this had a lot to do with the short amount of time they had to defend the city. Yang Shindong had promised everyone that he would only defend the city for 1 day and 1 night. Once the reinforcements arrived, they wouldn't have to risk their lives anymore. It was because of this hope that everyone could continue to persevere. Even though many of the civilians were still vomiting after seeing the blood, they endured it when they thought about how they would be able to return home with their silver. On the other hand, if there wasn't a time limit, their hearts would have been in chaos. Rajiv and the others didn't know this. They understood that the city was very difficult to attack, and the 5-star Army's reinforcements were about to arrive. They had reached a point where they had to make a decision. They could either continue to attack the city and charge without caring about their losses, or they could take advantage of the fact that the 5-star Army's reinforcements hadn't arrived and immediately retreat as far away as possible to preserve their limited strength. As for what to do, the generals looked at each other and didn't make a final decision. Report. Just when everyone didn't know what to do, a messenger entered the main tent. Report. A young man who claims to be Mu Tsong is outside the tent. He says he has an important matter to discuss with all of you. Mu Tsong, the eldest son of Shiping King Mu Bin. Luo Guan and Wu Yingtu looked at each other. Others didn't know, but they knew this person's identity. Next, Luo Guan explained Mu Tsong's identity to Rajiv and the others. After hearing that this person had Shiping King's background, hope reappeared in Rajiv's eyes. Quickly, invite him in. At this time, Mu Tsong suddenly appeared outside the tent. Even if one thought with their toes, it was obvious why he was here. In the past, Shiping King was also a potential enemy of the 3 provincial kings. If this person dared to appear, he would definitely be captured alive. But now that there was a powerful person like Bugnam of Gojoseon, infighting was impossible. They should be thinking about how to unite. Under the guidance of a messenger, the extraordinary Mu Tsong walked into the main tent. As a minister and general of the Ming dynasty, the great-grandson of Qianning King Mu Ying, the grandson of King Ding Yuan Mu Cheng, and the son of Duke Qian Mu Bin, as well as the future 3rd-generation Duke Qian, he had a strong, noble aura. Just by walking in, his extraordinary aura was revealed, especially the smile on his face. It gave people a feeling like a spring breeze. In fact, after the ministers of the Ming dynasty, there were very few idiots, especially those who were groomed by big families to inherit the mantle. They had to undergo all kinds of training from a very young age. This was also the reason why the nobles could last for hundreds of years. The so-called existence was reasonable. The nobles were able to survive under the constant replacement of the ministers and the constant change of the emperor. They also had to put in quite a bit of effort behind the scenes. Mu Tsong, who had been trained as a successor since he was young, had been learning skills since he was 3 years old. Now, although he was only 17 years old, the aura around him was already not something normal people could compare to. After entering the tent, Mu Tsong first inspected everyone before cupping his hands in greeting. When he greeted Ravji and the others one by one, he called out everyone's names. Without being introduced, he could clearly recognize everyone. This was enough to prove his skills and also showed that Mu Tsong had done quite a bit of work in secret. Like this, Mu Tsong's first impression of him was quite good. Rafi spoke up and gave him a seat. The 6 of them sat down together. After Mu Tsong sat down, Rafi looked at Luo Guan. The only Han general asked, "But I wonder why young Master Mu is here?" This was clearly a consultant who knew what was going on, but no one had any doubts about this statement. Even if everyone had guessed Mu Tsong's intentions, they couldn't just say, "What? Are you here to help us?" "That's great. We're very grateful. Please make your move quickly." Just tell us what you need, and we'll agree to it. How could Mutsung not sense that Luo Guan was probing? He immediately smiled and said, "Generals, this young master is here on my father's orders to assist you in taking down Yunnan Manor." Everyone couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief when their intentions were revealed. Even if they had guessed it, it had a completely different meaning when it came from Mutsung's mouth. But what does His Highness King Sheeping want to do? This time, Raffi took the initiative to ask before Luo Guan could speak. It was clear that this person was indeed anxious. Seeing Raffi's hopeful eyes, Mutsung chuckled. Then, he opened his folding fan and said with grace, "Generals, the current situation is very critical. The 5-star Army's reinforcements are about to arrive. The earliest wave might appear outside the battlefield in a few hours. In other words, there isn't much time left. If we still can't take down Yunnan Manor, have you considered the following situation?" "Situation? What situation?" Raffi asked with an unsightly expression. Seeing that the other party didn't want to face this question, Mutsung chuckled and said, "Generals, Bugnam of Gojosian has already arrived at Yunnan Manor. The next step is to solve the problem of the 3 provinces. Now that the 3 provincial kings are still alive, it means that Bugnam of Gojosian has no opponents here. Once the main force of the 5-star army arrives, with his personality, how could he tolerate the existence of generals here? I'm afraid a large-scale cleanup operation will be imperative at that time, right?" Everyone's expression sank. This was exactly what they were worried about. If they didn't consider this problem, they would have already retreated. Why would they be stuck in a dilemma here? Since no one objected, Mutsung continued. "Now that Bangla has been destroyed by Bugnam of Gojosian and the 3 provincial kings are missing, everyone has become rootless duckweeds. If we don't think of a way to join a new faction, we can't think of any other outcome other than being destroyed. Oh, right. You don't have to think about where you can't go in the world. Hee. The truth is that other than Nanming, the surrounding areas have been occupied by the 5-star army. Even if you want to go, you don't have a direction." Rajiv's and the others' faces turned uglier and uglier as they listened to Lin Yun's words. Faced with this kind of humiliating words, they really wanted to object. However, they helplessly found that what Mutsung said was right. Even if they wanted to refute, they didn't know what to say. Everyone's silence was enough to explain the problem. Mutsung knew that the time had come, so he opened his mouth again and tried to recruit. "Generals, there are only 2 paths in front of you now. First, immediately surrender to Bugnam of Gojosian and you might be able to keep your life. But forget about glory and wealth. To be honest, with your actions and the fact that you attacked the city, it's already good enough that you can keep your life. As for the second path, it's to join my banner. As long as you're willing to join, you'll be a general of Nanming. My father can guarantee your safety and your current position. After all, no matter how powerful Bugnam of Gojosian is, he's still a subject of the Great Ming. How can a subject provoke his master?" Chapter 1589. The matter was finally made clear. Mutsung didn't seem to be in a hurry for everyone to express their stance. Instead, he put away his folding fan and slowly sipped on the tea on the table. However, from time to time, his eyes would vaguely sweep across the crowd, indicating that his heart was not calm at all. Coming as a lobbyist this time was also a risk. No one knew what Loveji and the others were thinking. What if they were prepared to surrender to Yang Chendong? Then wouldn't he be walking right into a trap and be captured to take credit? Although the possibility of this was very low, it was still possible. Therefore, Sheeping King Mu Bin didn't agree to Mutsung coming as a lobbyist until Mutsung said it was a critical moment of survival. Yunnan Manor was where the Mu family had lived for generations. Without this place, they would have no roots, no weight, and no influence in the southern Ming Empire. For the Mu family's future, and to thank the great Ming Empire for their kindness to their ancestors, this risk was worth taking. That was why Mutsung appeared here. That was why he said those words. But in reality, his little heart was pounding rapidly. He was even prepared to die for a noble cause. Even if he died, he couldn't fall into Yang Chendong's hands and let Bugnam of Gojoseon use him to threaten his royal father. Muzong carefully observed everyone. At this moment, everyone was seriously considering Muzong's words. As he said, they really didn't have any other choice now. Disregarding everything else, it was indeed, as the other party had said, they had no way out. If they couldn't take down Yunnan Manor and rescue Zhu Huiqiang before the Five-Star Army's main force arrived, then they really wouldn't have a place to live in the future. Could they rescue Zhu Huiqiang just by taking down Yunnan Manor? Who knew if this person was alive or dead, or had fallen into Yang Qindong's hands? If it was the latter, they probably wouldn't be able to find Zhu Huiqiang even if they took down Yunnan Manor. In that case, what was the point of taking down Yunnan Manor? At the end of the day, they were determined to attack Southern Cloud Manor just to find a boss for themselves. In a place like the Great Ming Dynasty, where everything was particular about status, without Zhu Huihua's protection, their existence was unreasonable and everyone had the right to punish them. This also meant that their existence would not last long. But now, things were different. Muzong was here. They had another choice, which was to become Sheeping King's subordinates. That way, they would have a backer, and they would also have a name. Just as Muzong had said, Sheeping Wang was from the Southern Ming Dynasty. Yang Qindong was only a king with a different surname from the Great Ming Dynasty. If he dared to attack King Sheeping, he would be making an enemy out of the Southern Ming Empire. That would be a great disrespect, and he would lose in terms of innate ability. As for the matter of surrendering, no one even considered it. Their previous actions had already offended the Five-Star Army. Surrendering to them would only bring shame to themselves. Therefore, there was only one option left, which was to seek refuge with King Sheeping. The generals quickly made a decision in their hearts. In their eyes, the reason why they were willing to obey Zhu Huihua's orders was because he was a king personally conferred by the Great Ming Dynasty. Now that they had a better choice, Zhu Huihua's life and death had nothing to do with them. I'm willing to pledge my loyalty to King Sheeping. The first to think it through was Rajiv. He was originally a general of the Binjgrad Kingdom. Now that the kingdom was destroyed, he had no other choice. After Rajiv took the lead, Luo Guan, Wu Yingtu, Azad, Huck, and the others also expressed their loyalty to Muzong one by one. All right, Muzong stood up excitedly. After all, he was only a 17-year-old youth. Even if he was shrewd, there was a limit to it. Seeing that he had achieved his goal, of course, he would be excited. Young master, I wonder what King Sheeping wants us to do next. It was Rajiv who asked, but his attitude was very humble. It seemed like young Master Muzong was the leader in the absence of King Sheeping. At this moment, not only Rajiv, but the other generals also looked at Muzong, waiting for his answer. Ahem. After clearing his throat, Muzong raised his head higher and spoke more forcefully. Everyone, thank you for believing in my father. Don't worry. Since everyone has made a wise choice, you will be part of King Sheeping's residence in the future. You will also be part of the Southern Ming Dynasty. Even if we can't defeat the Five-Star Army in the future, as long as we withdraw from the battlefield in time, the Five-Star Army won't dare to do anything to you, because you have the powerful Great Ming Dynasty behind you. Yes, yes. Everyone nodded like chickens pecking at rice. This was the result they wanted. Speaking of this, it had to be said that the Great Ming Dynasty was still a colossal existence in everyone's mind. Whether it was territory, army, or economic strength, the Southern Ming Dynasty and Baiming were not small countries that could be compared to them. There were even a lot of rumors that the Five-Star Army was invincible and destroyed countries wherever they went, but they didn't seem to have any conflicts with the Great Ming Dynasty. Even though Baiming had caused trouble for the Five-Star Army several times, they only focused on defense. All of this seemed to indicate that the Five-Star Army was strong, but they were not a match for the Great Ming Dynasty. The reason why the Great Ming Dynasty didn't really attack the Five-Star Army was because they were all Han and had the same ancestry. Secondly, the Great Ming Dynasty's national policy was that they wouldn't attack unless they were attacked. The Five-Star Army respected the Great Ming Dynasty, so everyone was at peace with each other. Otherwise, if the Southern Ming dynasty or Bai Ming really wanted to attack, the five-star army wouldn't be a match for them. Once this saying spread, it was seen as a golden rule by many people, especially since the five-star army didn't come out to deny it. It was seen as the truth by many people. Therefore, to be able to join the king of Shiping's army was very tempting for Rajiv and the others. Back to the main topic. After getting Rajiv and the others to surrender, Mu Tsong told them the result of his discussion with his father. Everyone, my father's intention is to take advantage of the fact that we have the advantage of military strength and take down Yunnan Prefecture before the five-star army's reinforcements arrive. We need to prove to the Southern Ming dynasty that we are strong. Only then can we get more support from the imperial court. At the same time, it's also a warning to Yang Qindong not to provoke us. Otherwise, he won't be able to bear the consequences. Well said. Rajiv and the others immediately cheered when they heard this. They had just joined the king of Shiping's army and urgently needed an opportunity to prove themselves. Taking down Yunnan Prefecture was the best way to prove themselves. With such a simple idea, everyone reached a consensus. This was exactly what Mu Tsong wanted. Under the premise that they had the same goal, the next step was to discuss the next military plan. The siege had to continue. Not only that, they also had to think of a plan to deal with the five-star army's reinforcements. The generals began to use their talents and discussed. On the tower of Yunnan Prefecture, the three provincial armies had stopped attacking for half an hour. In the three provincial palaces in the city, Yang Qindong's expression didn't change after he heard Ba Daojiang's report. Sixth young master, do you think they're not going to retreat? Ba Daojiang asked again when he didn't get a response. Obviously, he wanted to learn more. Yang Qindong admired Ba Daojiang very much. This person was very uncouth, but because of this, he was very loyal. Moreover, he had followed Yang Qindong for more than 10 years and had performed well. The Black Cavalry was about to be expanded. When the time came, the position of a captain would be set in stone. Yang Qindong naturally nurtured such a talent. After glancing at Ba Daojiang, Yang Qindong said, whether they escape or not, their ending won't change. Since they're enemies with the five-star army, they're our enemies. Unless they surrender, they won't be able to escape our pursuit, even if they run to the ends of the earth. Magnanimous, Ba Daojiang couldn't help but praise after hearing this. Yang Qindong gave everyone the impression that no matter how big the problem was, he wouldn't care about it, and he could solve any problem easily. With such an omnipotent, capable, and invincible leader, what was there to be afraid of? The only thing to be afraid of was that the enemy would be scared and there wouldn't be a big battle to fight. In the face of Ba Daojiang, who was thirsty for knowledge, Yang Qindong certainly wouldn't just say that. He thought for a moment and said, actually, what the three provincial armies will do is no longer the young master's concern. What I'm thinking about now is where the king of Shiping went. It's impossible for him not to hear about such a big thing. It's strange that he hasn't done anything yet. As the saying goes, there must be a demon behind this. This is the person we need to guard against. Yang Qindong's words stunned Ba Daojiang. Sixth young master, do you mean that our biggest enemy is the king of Shiping? For now, yes. After all, an enemy who doesn't make a move is the scariest. Once he makes a move, and we know his purpose, there's nothing to be afraid of. How about this? Send someone to inform Beta Persei and tell him to be careful. Also, tell Yang San to keep an eye on the city. The Mu family has been living in Yunnan Prefecture for generations. No one knows how strong his hidden forces are here. There's no harm in being on guard. Yes. Ba Daojiang's expression became a lot more serious after hearing this. He had already understood the meaning behind Yang Qindong's words. The most threatening king of Shiping had not made a move until now. It was very likely that he was planning something in the dark. This was what they needed to guard against the most. While everyone's attention was still on the city defense battle, Yang Qindong had already seen the bigger picture. Ba Daojiang felt that he still needed to learn to be vigilant in times of peace. He needed to learn to be vigilant all the time. Chapter 1590. Just as Yang Qindong thought, A group of people were having a gathering in a rather large courtyard in the southern Cloud Manor. The courtyard was filled with people. If one looked carefully, one would see that their waists were bulging and they were all carrying weapons. At this moment, there was no one else other than the three great clans in Yunnan who could rise up such a force in the city. The three great clans of Yunnan refer to clans that had a certain amount of power and wealth. There were many forces like this in the entire Great Ming Dynasty. As big as the capital city of the Northern Ming Dynasty and the capital city of the Southern Ming Dynasty, such forces existed in small towns. This was what people often called the Sheriff family group. It could also be called the tyrant. Speaking of aristocratic groups, they were not only in the Great Ming Dynasty, but also in other countries. Yang Shandong's method of dealing with them was very direct. If words had to be used to describe it, it would be 4 words: uprooting them. Yes, uprooting them. No matter what kind of background they had or what kind of backing they had, even their country would be destroyed, so why would they care about a small force like yours? If you know what's good for you, take out 90% of your wealth, and we can spare your lives. However, you can't stay where you were before. You'll have to move out like most people. This is also the best way to reduce their influence. On the other hand, if they encountered people who wanted money more than their lives, they would be killed. The money would directly go to Yang Xie's treasury and could be used to fill the treasury, making it much simpler. It was precisely because of this that without the existence of the so-called aristocrats, the security of the land occupied by Yang Xie quickly stabilized. After all, there was no one to organize them to resist the Han army, which was equivalent to having no opponents. All this time, Yang Shandong had dealt with the aristocrats of foreign races. He had not directly come into contact with the aristocrats of the Han. South Cloud Manor was the first town that the Yang faction had conquered. Naturally, some of the problems that had been hidden under the surface were exposed. Yunnan Manor was the capital of Yunnan. To be able to be called one of the 3 great clans, their influence was not something that ordinary small clans could compare to. Usually, they were in a competitive relationship. After all, the market was only so big. The more you did, the less you would get. So usually, they hated each other to death. But now, because they had a common goal, they were united. There was no such thing as an eternal friend in the world, only eternal benefits. The so-called 3 great clans were the Qin clan, Wang clan, and Li clan. Speaking of which, these 3 families all had a close relationship with the king of the 3 provinces, Zhu Huixin. They were either related to him by blood, affection, or direct interests. Let's put it this way. The reason why these 3 clans were able to grow so big was all thanks to Zhu Huixin's daily care. The reason why these 3 families were able to grow so big was because they had a very good relationship with the Mu family, who was previously known as the King of Yunnan. Now that Zhu Huixin's whereabouts were unknown, the 3 families did not know that the 3 provincial kings had been captured by Yang Shandong. That was why they didn't make a move until they received Wang Mubin's letter. Only then did they have a clear direction. Now, they gathered together for this meeting to discuss how to gain benefits in this chaotic world. Merchants didn't like chaotic times, and so did nobles. Although this represented an opportunity, it also represented killing intent. After all, they could make up for it in the future if they made less money, but if they lost their lives, they would lose everything. However, they only had money and a little power. It was impossible for them to stop the general trend, let alone the powerful 5-star army. Therefore, when chaos came, they could only watch it first. Just as they were thinking about whether they should meet Yang Shandong and sound him out, King Shiping's letter arrived. The 3 families all received the letter, and the content was almost the same. King Shiping asked them to join forces to create chaos in the city and act as spies for them to counterattack Yunnan Prefecture. The letter also stated that Yang Shandong's daily behavior was quite cruel to the nobles. If the 3 families did not cooperate, they could only leave 10% of their wealth and get out of Yunnan Prefecture. It was this letter that completely made the 3 families make a choice, which was to become enemies with Yang Shandong. After all, their roots were in Yunnan Prefecture, and they owned a lot of land and industries here. If they could take away their industries, what about their land? Therefore, once they really left this place, it meant that they would lose a lot. This was absolutely the same as taking away their lives. No one was willing to give up everything, take out the foundation that generations of their family had worked hard for decades, or even hundreds of years. If they did that, they would not be able to see their ancestors after death. Since they didn't want to surrender, the only way left was to fight with their lives on the line. Fortunately, the main force of the five-star army had not yet entered the city, so they still had a chance. Especially with King sheeping outside the city, it seemed that they had a high chance of winning. The three families sat together. The heads of the three families, Qin Inkong, Wang Shufu, and Li Jiayin, sat facing each other in the innermost secret room in the courtyard. Since the three families had made a decision, the next step was to see how much strength they could contribute. Qin Inkong was the first to speak. The Qin family can organize a team of 1,000 people. The Wang family can organize a team of 800 people. The Li family can also organize a team of 800 people. Wang Shufu and Li Jiayin also expressed their opinions one after another. For a big family like theirs, it was not difficult to gather such a number of people with guards and some workers. Moreover, the Great Ming Dynasty did not prohibit weapons from being sold in the market. It only prohibited armor from being sold in the market, so weapons were not a problem for them. With the strength of nearly 3,000 people in hand, the three heads of the big families looked at each other with a faint expression of excitement. They knew that once this matter was completed, they would definitely be great contributors. Their achievements in the future would definitely be greater than now. If they could even capture or even kill Bugnam of Gojoseon alive, it was very likely that they would be heavily rewarded by the imperial court of the Southern Ming Dynasty. That's right, the target of the three families was Yang Qindong, which was the original king residence of the three provinces where he was now. At this time, the defense of the king residence of the three provinces could be said to be extremely weak. All the forces that could be used were sent to the city tower to guard the city. This caused the defense of the king residence to be less than 1/10 of the usual. This was the time for them to attack. Under a surprise attack, with the advantage of numbers, it was very likely that they would succeed. If that was the case, not only would the king of Shiping thank them, but the emperor of the Southern Ming Dynasty would also thank them. After all, Yang Qindong's existence was a huge threat to everyone. With the soldiers in hand, the next step was to discuss the invasion plan. Based on the three families' understanding of the Southern Cloud Prefecture, they quickly formulated an invasion route to ensure that the army would be placed outside the king residence of the three provinces without attracting any attention and launch a fatal attack. Since there was time, the three heads then went to make arrangements. For example, the distribution of weapons and raising of morale required time. Therefore, they set the time for the attack to be 4 hours later, which was before noon. Yang Qindong was completely unaware of all this. Not only did he not know, but Yangsan also did not receive any news. Compared to the three families that had been in the Southern Cloud Prefecture for many years, Yangsan Security Bureau was considered an outsider. It was not difficult for them to hide some things. At this time, Yangsan also received Yang Qindong's instructions. Then, he arranged for scouts to go outside the city. Chapter 1591. Meanwhile, Mu Tsung had brought 20,000 soldiers to the edge of the forest. The 20,000 soldiers entered the forest beside the official road and drew their bows. They were ready to attack at any time. This was the first battle after joining Shiping. Everyone wanted to perform well to raise their status. The three generals all wanted to perform well. They were all on high alert. Just the scouts were sent 10 miles away, just in case. Finally, less than 2 hours after the 20,000 soldiers entered the forest, the scouts at the front reported that the reinforcements from Guizhou had appeared. The 5,000 cavalry led the way. They were very fast and were less than 5 miles away from the forest. But at the same time, there was also bad news. The cavalry was too fast, separating them from the main force behind them. This ambush was destined to not be able to wipe out all of the enemies. Whatever. 5,000 cavalry is not a small force. Let's attack them first. Mu Song thought it was a pity, but he quickly made the decision. After all, as a general, the biggest taboo was to constantly plan. It would only cause them to lose all their advantages. Although it was cavalry, Mu Song was very confident in fighting 5,000 with 20,000. He was well prepared. Not only him, but his subordinates were also full of confidence. They liked to bully others with numbers because this way, their chances of winning would be higher and their safety would be more guaranteed. Time slowly passed. The 5,000 cavalry led by Jiang Wuqing did not know there was an ambush here. Originally, they needed to send scouts to scout the forest first. However, they did not have a time now. No one knew what the situation in Yunnan Manor was like. If they could arrive earlier, they would be able to help Bugnam of Gojoseon defeat the enemy. They would be able to contribute sooner. With this thought in mind, Jiang Wuqing hated the fact that the horse he was riding was too slow. How could he do something like stopping? Just like that, the 5,000 cavalrymen entered the forest on both sides of the official road. Mu Song's shout came from the forest after all the cavalrymen entered. Then, the whooshing sounds of arrows rang out, accompanied by piles of boulders that suddenly piled up on the official road. The appearance of the boulders instantly cut the 5,000 cavalry into several parts. Except for 100 cavalry who ran at the back and turned to escape in time, the rest, including Jiang Wuqing, were trapped on the official road. They became live targets in the eyes of the 20,000 Mu soldiers. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Under the continuous barrage of arrows, the cavalry who had nowhere to hide were shot one after another and fell to the ground. Jiang Wuqing was better off. Under the protection of his personal guards, he was not hit by any arrows. However, the situation had become very bad. As wave after wave of arrows were shot, the number of personal guards around him was constantly decreasing. "General, let's charge." The guards watched as their comrades were shot and died one by one. They did not even see the enemy's shadow. They could not help but feel anxious. "Charge!" Everyone dismount and charge towards the mountain in the east. Of course, Jiang Wuqing knew that he had fallen into a trap. However, it was too late to say anything now. He could only place all his hopes on the road to countercharge. Want to charge? Prepare the stones. When they come, blast them back. Hee. In the forest, Mu Song was in a good mood. Seeing that he had trapped 5,000 enemy cavalry in one move, he felt like he had the power of the world in his hands. Jiang Wuqing chose to charge. He led the troops towards the dense forest in the east again and again. However, he had to retreat again and again because of the boulders rolling down. Under this repeated process, the number of soldiers around him decreased. There were less than 2,000 people left. "We surrender. Please don't kill us." Finally, some of the cavalry could not hold on any longer. They threw their weapons to the ground and squatted. Many of these people were originally from the Three Provinces Army. They believed their General Jiang Wuqing and surrendered to the Five-Star Army. At the end of the day, they didn't have any sense of identity with the Five-Star Army. Now, in order to survive, they had to surrender. So what? Kill. Don't let any of them go. Kill them all. I want them to know what will happen to the Five-Star Army if they surrender. Mu Song's eyes were filled with hatred as he roared. These cavalry should be the people of Shiping King. However, they first surrendered to the Three Provinces King and now to the Five-Star Army. He did not have a good impression of these people at all. The arrows did not stop. It was the same even if you dropped your weapon. Soon, hundreds of people were killed by the arrows. This made the kneeling people realize that surrendering was not a wise choice. "Let's fight. Pick up your weapons. We have no way out." No one knew who shouted, but the cavalry soldiers who had turned into infantry stood up one by one. At this moment, their eyes were red as they shouted and rushed into the forest with all their might. However, sometimes you can't risk your life just because you want to. It also depends on whether the opponent gives you the chance. Boulders continued to roll down from the dense forest, accompanied by arrows. Few people who rushed into the forest could return alive. After repeating this twice, the injured Jiang Wuqing realized that there were less than 500 people around him who could fight. 5,000 turned into 500. In less than an hour, he knew that he was going to lose this time, because he charged too quickly. He did not even have the chance to wait for reinforcements. "Soldiers, this general has let everyone down. I will atone for my sins with my death. Come, let's launch the final charge together." Jiang Wuqing held a spear in his hand. His face was ashen. In his heart, he prayed that Yao Yingjun must treat his family well. This was his last hope before his death. Then, he led the soldiers to charge. Battle cries rang out. However, because of the harsh terrain, it did not take long for the cries to stop. Jiang Wuqing fell on the path of the charge. He was hit by 4 arrows. One of the arrows hit his chest and took his life. 5,000 cavalry were left here, just like that. This gave Mu Tsong and the others great confidence. The 5-star army is only SOSO. Since we could defeat them once, we could defeat them a second time, a third time. Haha. Mu Tsong shouted as if he was crying with joy. The ambush in the dense forest severely injured Yao Yingjun's troops who came to help. When he heard the cavalry report that the cavalry had set up an ambush in the dense forest, he was really shocked. He immediately sent out scouts to inquire about the situation. Then, he sent a telegram to Yang Chendong. The general meaning was that the situation had changed. Their reinforcements might not be able to arrive on time. He asked for Bugnam of Gojoseon's understanding. And before this telegram was sent to Yang Chendong, the situation in Yunnan Manor changed. First, Rajiv and Wu Yingtu led more than 30,000 troops to launch a crazy siege. They quickly attracted the attention of the city guards. Under the fierce attack, the West Gate was in danger. Beta Persei had no choice but to send reinforcements from the other 3 gates. There was nothing wrong with this move, but this was exactly what Sheeping King Mubin wanted. He already knew that Yang Chendong was good at bewitching people. It was obviously not feasible to take down Yunnan Manor from the front. So he planned to sneak into the city. As long as he could succeed, the 10,000 troops he led would become the main force. When the time came, it would be no problem to take down the 3 provinces. For this plan, he had already sent a message to the 3 major families in the city. He asked them to send some people to the East Gate and cooperate with him to lead the army into the city. The 3 major families had already bet their lives on Sheeping King. Naturally, they would cooperate with him. First, they sent 1,000 people to the vicinity of the prince's mansion in the 3 provinces and secretly controlled all the exits there to prevent Yang Chendong from escaping. Then, more than 1,000 people suddenly appeared after transferring troops from the East Gate to the West Gate. More than 1,000 guards from the 3 major families armed with various weapons still had some fighting power. The most important thing was that the timing of their appearance was too good. They caught the soldiers guarding the East Gate by surprise. Only 1,000 people and 500 surrendered troops were responsible for guarding this place. Even Beta Persei did not leave any main force here. He focused all his energy on guarding the West Gate. This gave the enemy an opportunity to take advantage of. The battle ended very quickly. The East City Gate was breached in less than a quarter of an hour due to the fact that their military strength and combat prowess were inferior to the enemy's. Then, the East Gate opened from the inside. The 10,000 Mu family troops outside the city suddenly appeared and jumped in. The East Gate was broken, and a large number of Mu family troops rushed into the city. However, they did not rush to the West Gate. Instead, their target was the 3 provinces' palaces in the city. When the news was passed from the defeated soldiers to the West Gate, Beta Persei was really shocked. Quick, quick! Pick 10,000 people to go to the 3 provinces' palaces to protect the young master's safety. Where's Chung Hu? I'll leave the battle here to you. You must guard this place no matter what. Beta Persei called Chung Hu and ordered him while mobilizing the troops. This was Beta Persei, who had followed Yang Chendong to fight in the north and south, had already developed a certain momentum and did not appear to be flustered. Yes, second brother, don't worry. As long as Chung Hu is still here, the West Gate will not be lost. Chung Hu patted his chest and promised. Then, he watched Beta Persei lead the 10,000 soldiers into the city. The 3 provinces' palaces. Shouts suddenly sounded outside. Dao Xiao and Ba Dao Jiang also quickly appeared in front of Yang Shendong. When they reported the situation outside, they also asked if they needed to retreat to another place. The reason why the Black Cavalry was called elite was not only because they were well-trained and well-equipped, but more importantly, because of their fearless spirit. How could such an army be flustered by the sudden appearance of the enemy? Chapter 1592. How's everyone's rest? Yang Shendong asked calmly. Although Mu Bin's move was beyond his expectations, with Da Song in his hands, there was nothing in this world that he was afraid of. The so-called everyone was naturally referring to the Black Cavalry. They had been fighting for days and fired countless shots. Their bodies had reached a point of fatigue, and they had lost a certain amount of combat power the day before. Fortunately, they had not been given any tasks for the day, so they were able to rest well. Although they had not fully recovered, they had at least recovered 70 to 80% of their combat power. It would not be a problem for them to join the battle again. Everyone is rested enough. Please give the order. Sixth young master, Dao Xiao and Ba Daojiang stood at attention and said confidently, "All right, since that's the case, I'll distribute the weapons. Whether or not we can defend this place will depend on the Black Cavalry." Yang Shendong looked at Dao Xiao and Ba Daojiang with trust in his eyes. They had not taken a single step back when they were surrounded by Zhu Huiqiu. Now, Sheeping King had come in a hurry. What was there to be afraid of? Yang Shendong believed in the 500 Black Cavalry under him, but he believed in himself even more. Yes, Dao Xiao and Ba Daojiang saluted again. When they left the palace, they were filled with confidence. The three gates of the three provincial palaces had already been surrounded by the three great families. When they couldn't figure out the situation in the manner, they didn't rashly launch an attack. Instead, they continuously poured the kerosene that they had prepared onto the courtyard walls. Then, they tossed a match into the air, and a raging fire began to burn. The poor palaces of the three provinces were about to experience another fire in just one day. Under the fire, the air became hot and dry. Visibility was also affected. The three great families took the opportunity to attack. The guards of the three great clans had long been prepared for this. Every one of them had a wet blanket draped over their bodies. They kicked open the door that had already lost its frame due to the fire and loudly shouted as they charged into the courtyard. Da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da. Concentrated gunshots rang out, and after a sweep, the first few hundred guards who rushed into the courtyard fell into a pool of blood. When the others saw that the situation was not good, they hurriedly retreated. Ba Daojiang, who was in charge of the first line of defense, was busy reloading his Type 95 rifle as he spoke with a look of disdain. "You're delusional enough to think that you can take on our Black Cavalry with such little ability. You really don't know how to write the word death." They had lost nearly half of their men in a single charge. The patriarchs of the three great clans had ugly expressions on their faces. They finally knew why the three provincial kings were defeated by the five-star army in their own territories. With such a tyrannical firearm, Zhu Huiyiu's defeat was not a loss. Just as they were lamenting, Wang Mubin of Sheeping finally arrived with his troops. After understanding the basic situation, he ordered them to continue attacking without hesitation. Although doing this would result in a huge loss, Mubin had no other choice. If he couldn't quickly take down the three provinces' kings' palaces and capture Yang Shendong, he might be surrounded by the five-star army. Mubin gave the order to attack, and at the same time promised a high position and generous salary. Anyone who could capture Yang Shendong alive or find his corpse would be promoted by 3 ranks and rewarded with 10,000 taels of silver. Generous rewards would attract brave men, and there were many people who would sacrifice their lives for money. Not to mention, on the surface, they seemed to have the upper hand. At that moment, the main gate, side gate, and back gate were filled with battle cries. The less than 500 Black Cavalry needed to defend these 3 gates, and suddenly, the pressure on them increased. The greatest damage of firearms came from their intimidation. When no one was afraid of firearms, They needed to show their killing power. However, the Black Cavalry had less than 500 men, and they were facing more than 10,000 opponents. The pressure was unimaginable. "Young master, let's break out of the encirclement." Dao Xiao appeared in front of Yang Qindong for the second time, and his face was filled with anxiety. The three provincial kings' residences were too big, and the surrounding walls were already several miles long. It was impossible for the less than 500 Black Cavalry to defend this place and ensure that no one could break in. For the sake of Yang Qindong's safety, breaking out of the encirclement was the best plan. "No need," Yang Qindong rejected and waved his hand. This was the three provincial kings' residences, and it was no longer the courtyard that he lived in before. If this place was breached, then the people in the city would lose their backbone. If someone instigated the people, whether it was the people defending the city or the surrendered soldiers, they could be used. At that time, it was not impossible for them to turn around and attack. If that was the case, before the main force arrived, they could only retreat from Yunnan Prefecture. In this way, if they wanted to take over this place, they would have to pay a higher price. It would also give others the impression that the five-star army was only SOSO and that they could be defeated. That would be the real problem. If they were dealing with other foreign nations, Yang Qindong might have chosen to retreat. After all, it was not shameful to run away if you could not win. However, this was the territory of the Han people. If they retreated this time, it would be equivalent to losing the hearts of the people. If they wanted to take over this place, the price they would have to pay would be too high, and the number of people who would have to die would only increase. This was not something that Yang Qindong wanted to happen. Therefore, Yang Qindong could not retreat at this time. "Dao Xiao, you can withdraw a certain amount of the defensive line, give up on the outer courtyard, and just defend the inner courtyard. As for other things, don't worry about them." Yang Qindong had already made a decision. Since the Black Cavalry was having a hard time defending, it was time for him to make a move. Although Dao Xiao still wanted to say something, since it was an order from his master, he had no reason to object. He agreed and went to arrange it. After he left, Yang Qindong's body flashed and entered the large warehouse. A row of neatly arranged firearms appeared in front of him. What should he use? If there were no Black Cavalry here, Yang Qindong could use the V-10 helicopter to kill everyone. If there were no Black Cavalry here, Yang Qindong could also use a tank with thick armor to kill the enemies. However, it was clear that there were Black Cavalry here. If he summoned these things, how would he explain it? Most importantly, the current situation was not a matter of life and death. Forget it. The image of Sylvester Stallone in The First Blood flashed across his mind. Yang Qindong chose a Type 95.5, 8mm caliber machine gun from the large warehouse. Type 95.5, 8mm caliber machine gun. The empty weight of the gun was 3.95 kilograms, 840 millimeters long, and had a range of 600 meters. It was loaded with either 30 bullets or 75 bullets. It was a powerful killing weapon. Yang Qindong took off his coat, put on a bulletproof vest, Kevlar on his head, and military boots on his feet. After his body was covered with bullets, Yang Qindong reappeared in the main hall. "Come on, let's fight." In a flash, Yang Qindong rushed out of the main hall. With his master-level skills and combat power, he nimbly headed for the outer courtyard. Outside the three provincial palaces, as the fire burned, reinforcements arrived in batches. The first to arrive were nearly 300 members of the Langya Special Forces. Previously, they had been cooperating with Yang San to investigate the situation in the city. Unfortunately, although their skills were not bad and each of them had unique skills, they were still unfamiliar with the city and had been taken advantage of by the three great clans. When they heard that the three big families had cooperated with Shiping Wang to take down the West City Gate and headed towards the three provinces, the members of the Iron Tiger team roared in anger. This was simply a provocation to the Wolf Fong Special Forces. This was something that they could not tolerate. Bring your weapons and set out. Kill whoever you see. No one is allowed to live. Iron Tiger was ruthless. Although the opponent this time was also Han, They dare to harm the sixth young master. In their eyes, they were already aliens and could only die. The second batch of reinforcements was the secret agents of the Security Bureau, led by Yang San. There were not many of them, only about 300 or so. There were also many non-operational personnel, but when Yang Chendong was in danger, what they had to do was to kill. Whether they could kill or not, they had to kill. The third batch of reinforcements was the 10,000 soldiers led by Beta Persei. However, due to the distance, it would take a lot of time to reach the palace. The sound of gunfire continued in the palace, and the attack continued. Because there were too many places to defend, the number of people was obviously insufficient. The black cavalry began to retreat from the outer palace to the inner palace. However, there was another figure who was the opposite of them. He was moving from the inner palace to the outer palace. He was Yang Chendong, who was covered in ammunition. Although the equipment on his body weighed dozens of kilograms, it did not hinder his movements at all. He easily leaped over the 2-meter-high wall with a single run. This was one of the benefits given to him since he transmigrated. He was originally a soldier king in his previous life, so his physical fitness was extremely strong. After the enhancement in this life, he was already invincible. After jumping over 2 walls and brushing past the black cavalry, he finally saw the first batch of opponents. This was a group of about 50 guards. Go to hell. Without any superfluous words, Yang Chendong raised his gun and fired. At this time, someone who could come to the palace of the 3 provinces with a sword in hand and an aggressive look was not an enemy. He really couldn't imagine who it could be. A magazine of bullets shot out as if they had eyes, not giving any opponent time to react. The sound of gunfire rang out, and their bodies fell to the ground. One after another, the team of 50 people only changed a magazine before they all died. Whoosh! With a flash of his figure, Yang Chendong had already left this place. His massacre had only just begun. In the later years, there were similar scenes in some movies and TV series, but they were often questioned by the so-called experts and beasts. How could a person fight against 10, 100, or even 1,000 people? This was simply unscientific. However, when they saw a hero confronting a regiment or even a division in a Western movie, they often opened their mouths and praised it, saying how realistic it was. Chapter 1593. They really don't know what to say about this kind of completely polar evaluation criteria. Don't they know that in real history, the Battle of Hobu Dagon, how glorious it was? In the first year of the Jin state, Liao Tianqing's 5th year, 1115, in the Jin, Liao War, the Jin army chased and defeated the main force of the Liao army in the strategic decisive battle at Hobu Dagon. The Jin army defeated the Liao army with 20,000 troops. The Liao army was defeated and many died. Defeating 700,000 people with 20,000 happened in the era of cold weapons. Yang Chendong was equipped with modern firearms and had the physical condition of a master. Under the endless supply of bullets, it was normal for him to create miracles. One man and one gun strode out of the mansion, and wave after wave of guards died under the muzzle of his gun. After the power of the guards was almost destroyed, the Mu army appeared. They were all wearing the same military uniform and armor, which made them look majestic and awe-inspiring. But it was useless. In the face of Yang Chendong, who was holding a heavy machine, they were only sending themselves to death. With great difficulty, a few people shot arrows at Yang Chendong, but they were also dodged by his agile figure. Occasionally, a bow and arrow pierced Yang Chendong's body, but it was blocked by the bulletproof vest and did not cause the slightest harm. Facing the elite forces of the Mu army, Yang Chendong's gun sounded again, and the enemies fell to the ground one after another. They couldn't imagine until they died that they, who claimed to be elites, couldn't even defeat an opponent with so many people. Of course, it was not that they didn't encounter danger. After all, so many Mu army had rushed into the mansion. But those who came into close contact with Yang Chendong were either killed by his heavy machine gun or thrown aside by his magical steps. Those who finally had a chance to attack were still dodged by Yang Chendong. Along the way, He was like a human-shaped woodcutter. Wherever he went, there were enemy corpses everywhere, and most of them were corpses that were smashed by heavy machine guns. In the excitement of killing, Yang Qindong rushed to wherever there were more people. Ever since Yang Qindong brought Datsong to the Great Ming Dynasty, he had never felt so satisfied with killing as he did this time. Unlike the last time when he dealt with Yeshen, he was forced to fight. This time, he chose to take the initiative. His goal was to kill people and capture King Shiping. Yes, Yang Qindong's goal was King Shiping. Since this person schemed against him, if he didn't fight back, wouldn't it be a waste of the saying that politeness demands reciprocity? Based on his intuition, King Shiping, Yang Qindong went all the way from the inner courtyard to the outer mansion and then went straight to the gate of the mansion of the three provinces. At this time, the Mu army's army was all ready. Previously, they had the advantage of numbers. Although they were facing the black cavalry with firearms, due to the limited number of people and the fact that there were too many places to defend, they still found a loophole and killed their way in. However, with Yang Qindong's attack, he turned the situation around with his own strength. As more and more people died in the charge, the Mu army could no longer be seen on the road from the main gate to the mansion of the three provinces. Even so, Yang Qindong was still charging out. He had a feeling that if King Shiping was outside, he must be near the main gate. After all, he was a king. He was always concerned about his reputation. It would be very embarrassing to let such a person leave through the side gate or the back gate. Therefore, Yang Qindong only had one direction to go, and that was the main gate. What's going on? Why is there no movement? Outside the main gate, as Yang Qindong expected, Mu Bin was there. However, at this moment, there was a puzzled expression on his face. Just a moment ago, there were still waves of battle cries in his ears. But why was there no movement at this moment? There were three families in Yunnan Mansion. Among them, Qin Kong was responsible for attacking the back gate. Wang Shufu was responsible for attacking the side gate, and only Li Jiayin was left to accompany Mu Bin at the main gate. Suddenly, there was no movement at the main gate, and the head of the Li family was also puzzled. However, even King Shiping Mu Bin could not figure out why. So how could he figure it out? Many people were surprised by the silence at the main gate. At this time, the experienced veterans had already grasped the long saber or sword in their hands tightly. They had a feeling that there must be something strange going on. They were afraid that something had happened that they did not know. Just when everyone was still scratching their heads in confusion, Yang Qindong's figure finally appeared outside the main entrance. As soon as Yang Qindong appeared, more than a dozen arrows flew in front of him. Yang Qindong dodged most of them, but there were still 2 arrows stuck in his body. However, they were only stuck in his body. As Yang Qindong's body shook, the 2 arrows stuck in his bulletproof vest fell to the ground. At this moment, his face was also revealed in front of everyone. Bugnam of Gojoseon, Mu Bin's eyesight was very good, and he immediately recognized Yang Qindong's identity. The corner of his mouth opened, revealing 2 neat rows of teeth. Yang Qindong laughed and said, "You are King Mu Bin of Shiping." "That's me." Although Mu Bin's eyes were full of surprise, because he did not expect Yang Qindong to take the initiative to appear, and only one person, he was more excited. This is Yang Qindong, the Bugnam of Gojoseon. Whether it is the Baiming Emperor or the Southern Ming Emperor, they both regarded him as a mortal danger. God knows how many times the 2 emperors thought about beheading this person in public, but they couldn't do it. And now, the opportunity has come to him. Doesn't this mean that his chance to make a great contribution has come? Men, capture him and reward him handsomely. In his excitement, Mu Bin naturally said. In fact, without him saying anything, the soldiers around him had already jumped out and rushed toward Yang Qindong, who was standing there alone. Go to hell. The muzzle of the heavy machine gun in his hand was raised, and there was a burst of gunshots. The more than 10 Mu family soldiers who rushed up were shot into sieves one by one, and they fell to the ground covered in blood. Even when they died, they couldn't close their eyes. The heavy machine gun's firing speed was too fast, and they didn't even have time to react. With a burst of gunshots, more than 10 people were killed. This scene also shocked the Mu family soldiers in front of the main gate. But they relied on the advantage of numbers and weren't too afraid. After all, Yang Chendong was only one person, and he only had one gun. Could he really kill hundreds of people present? Continue to go. If you can't catch him alive, then catch him dead, Mu Bin said as he took a few steps back. In this kind of dangerous situation, he wouldn't foolishly rush to the front. After receiving the order, the Mu family's troops on the left and right continued to rush forward. Even the dozens of guards led by Li Jiayin also rushed forward with a loud shout. But everyone knows that this is the time to make a great contribution. Even if it's a little risk of death, it seems to be worth it. Good. Yang Chendong's expression didn't change. On the contrary, his eyes lit up a little. He was worried that these people would turn around and run away. In that case, it would be difficult for him to make everyone stay with his strength alone. But if they want to rush up, that's what he wants. Tut, 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 tut. The sound of heavy machine guns kept ringing. The rapid reloading that Yang Chendong had worked hard to practice now played a role. In less than a second, he could reload a new magazine. This gave people the feeling that his gun had an endless supply of ammunition. Wherever the muzzle of the gun was pointed at, soldiers fell one after another. In just a short 2 minutes, not only was no one able to hurt a single hair on Yang Chendong's body, but they also threw down more than 200 corpses. This result shocked everyone. Everyone used to only hear that Yang Xie's firearms were very powerful. But it was only very powerful. If they were really invincible in the world, then they would have already made a move on the Great Ming Dynasty. Why wait until now? In many people's view, Yang Xie's firearms should also have drawbacks, and as long as they relied on the advantage of numbers, it was still possible to make up for this shortcoming. In the end, everyone would be evenly matched. But now, when they saw the power of the firearms, they realized that they were too optimistic in the past. They were too ignorant. The power of the firearms was more than several times more powerful than they imagined. Seeing that so many soldiers had died in such a short period of time, Mu Bin's expression changed greatly. He was also a person who was used to seeing life and death. Over the years, he had fought countless big and small battles, but he had never seen such a powerful person. With his own strength, he had the combat power of a powerful army. Seeing that Yang Chendong still had a lot of ammunition on him, Mu Bin felt that things were not going to go well. His instincts kicked in again. He turned around and tried to escape from this place. A gentleman would not stand under a dangerous wall. Not everyone was like Yang Chendong, who was already the king and was willing to take the lead in everything. You want to escape at this time? Stay with me. Yang Chendong had been paying attention to Mu Bin all the time. This was his main target. If he let this person escape, wouldn't his appearance this time be imperfect? A smoke grenade appeared in his left hand. He held his breath and threw the smoke grenade with his left hand. Then a second, third, and fourth smoke grenades appeared one after another. The front gate of the Three Provinces King, which was originally clearly visible, was soon surrounded by a cloud of smoke and dust. They could not see each other, and they could not see each other. It was especially chaotic. During this period, there were many violent coughs, which were stimulated by the smell of the smoke grenades. Yang Chendong, who had been holding his breath for a long time, was not affected at all. Instead, he turned his body again and quickly came behind Mu Bin, who was trying to escape. Then he reached out his left hand and grabbed at Mu Bin's neck. Chapter 1594. Although he was running away, Mu Bin's 5 senses were still there. When he felt a strong wind coming from behind him, he instinctively shrank his neck. Then he leaned sideways and grabbed the knife in his hand. Then he turned around and slashed. Yang Chendong retracted his arm and dodged the fatal knife. He thought to himself, that was close. He had also become careless and began to pay more attention to Mu Bin. Since he could become the king of Shiping by the Southern Ming Emperor, he was obviously not an ordinary person. He could only blame everything for going too smoothly, which made Yang Chendong lose his vigilance. Fortunately, his agility saved him. No matter what, his opponent did not hurt him. Yang Chendong, who was no longer careless, was even more terrifying once he got serious. When he stretched out his left hand again, Yang Chendong moved faster and grabbed at Mu Bin for the second time. Save me. Mu Bin suddenly felt a sense of danger when he missed his target. The knife just now seemed to be a hasty attack, but in fact, he had been planning for a long time. He wanted to counterattack when someone suddenly attacked him. He had been training a lot, and his results were very good. However, such a sure-win knife did not work. He knew that Yang Chendong was difficult to deal with. Now, seeing that he was closing in on him again, other than continuously waving his blade, he was also shouting loudly. King of Sheeping was indeed the king of Sheeping, especially a king like him who had been guarding the territory. He had been practicing martial arts since he was young, so he was quite skilled. Yang Chendong did not manage to catch him twice. He only managed to grab the saber at his waist and forcefully snatched it away. And it was at this time that several Mu family's bodyguards appeared in the surroundings. They were all veterans who had followed Mu Bin for hundreds of years, and each of them had extraordinary skills. Although they could not exert 100% of their strength because of the smoke bombs, they still rushed over when they heard the commotion. One by one, they rushed toward Yang Chendong desperately, just to give their king a chance to escape. Scram! Yang Chendong shouted. He swung the heavy machine gun as if it was an iron rod. This was also because everyone was too close to each other, so shooting was limited. But even if he doesn't use firearms, Yang Chendong is a grandmaster. Why would he be afraid of a few Mu family soldiers? The heavy machine gun abruptly turned into an iron rod and accurately smashed onto the Mu family's bodyguards who were rushing over. One by one, they were sent flying back in the same way they had rushed over. They screamed miserably as they were sent flying. Yang Chendong took an elegant step, still approaching Mu Bin step by step. Even though there were a few bodyguards blocking the way, the distance between the two sides was less than 10 steps. At such a distance, Yang Chendong was still confident that he could capture Mu Bin alive. It was like a cat catching a mouse. One was chasing and the other was escaping. The distance between the two sides was quickly closing. Perhaps sensing that he couldn't run away, Mu Bin turned around fiercely and shouted, "I'm going to fight you to the death." Then, he bumped into Yang Chendong. He still underestimated Yang Chendong. His 5 senses were already extraordinary. As soon as Mu Bin turned around, Yang Chendong sensed it. Before Mu Bin rushed over, he turned his body to the side. Then he stretched out his right foot and gently hooked it, hitting Mu Bin's leg. With a thud, Sheeping King fell to the ground. He quickly moved forward and stretched out his right foot as fast as he could, stepping on Mu Bin's back. With a little force, Mu Bin could not get up. Then, Yang Chendong fired again with the heavy machine gun. More than a dozen Mu family soldiers who had just reacted and wanted to get closer fell. Gunshots rang out, and Sheeping King was also stepped on. Yang Chendong easily obtained victory by fighting against hundreds of people by himself. Sheeping King's capture put a lot of pressure on the others. At this moment, they wanted to make a move, but they had some scruples. However, if they did not make a move, they did not know what to do. They were all stunned on the spot. Let go of Sheeping King. He is a king personally appointed by the Southern Ming Emperor. Are you trying to rebel? Seeing that they could not make a move, the head of the Li family, Li Jian, took the initiative to step forward. He stood on the moral high ground and criticized Yang Chendong, criticizing him. Son of a bitch. Yang Chendong did not even look at him. He gently hooked his right finger, and several bullets flew out from the muzzle. Each bullet hit Li Jian's body, leaving several bright red spots of blood. His body swayed again and again. Finally, Li Jian's arm swayed a few times in the air. Then, he fell to the ground with a thud, dead. The head of the Li family, one of the 3 major families in Yunnan Prefecture, was shot to death just like that. This scene shocked the others. They stood still and did not dare to move. That was the head of the Li family. In the eyes of many civilians and soldiers, he was definitely a high and mighty figure. But now, he was killed just because of a disagreement. Compared to that, they were nothing. After killing Li Jian, the others became well-behaved. Yang Chendong could finally breathe a sigh of relief. Yang Chendong was also a little tired after the massacre. After all, he was a human, not a god. Plus, with such heavy equipment on him, ordinary people would not be able to stand just running back and forth. Fortunately, he had a stronger physique than the others. Not long after, shouts came from behind him. Kill! Charge in and save the sixth young master. Following these shouts, a group of black cavalry rushed out from the main entrance. They were led by Ba Daojiang. Everyone's eyes were red, and each of them carried firearms. They looked like they had just walked out a mountain of corpses and a sea of fire. Ba Daojiang only found out later that Yang Qindong was gone. Originally, he thought that he had gone to the telecommunications room. It was only when Director Wang Shan came to ask for instructions with a telegram from Yao Engjun that Beta Persei found out that the young master was gone. There was no need for Ba Daojiang to explain what it meant for someone to disappear at this time. Ba Daojiang could imagine it. Previously, Yang Qindong had broken out alone and attracted the attention of the assassins. After that incident, Ba Daojiang blamed himself, thinking that he had not done his duty. Now that Yang Qindong had disappeared, one could imagine how anxious he was. After leaving the side entrance to Dao Xiao and the back entrance to the other black cavalry, Ba Daojiang led hundreds of black cavalry to break out from the main entrance. Along the way, all he saw were the corpses of his enemies. He could imagine who had done it, so he was even more anxious. After all, Yang Qindong was only one person. If he discovered something unexpected, there would be no one to inform him. The more he thought about it, the more anxious he became. Ba Daojiang and the others charged faster and faster. Finally, they appeared at the main entrance and finally saw Yang Qindong. When they saw that the young master was safe and sound, and that there was a person under his feet, and that there were corpses all over the ground in front of the young master, Ba Daojiang heaved a sigh of relief. Then, he led the black cavalry straight to Yang Qindong. The black cavalry also charged out. Seeing that there was no chance to attack Yang Qindong, the other Mu family soldiers at the main entrance wanted to escape. However, at this moment, gunshots rang out again. This time, they did not hit their bodies. Instead, they hit the air. If you don't want to die, stay where you are. Otherwise, the gun doesn't have eyes. They had already seen the power of the firearms. Who would dare to escape? Previously, they had taken action because there was a glimmer of hope. Now that even their last hope was gone, everyone had lost their will to resist. All they wanted was to save their lives. When everyone stopped moving, the black cavalry held them down one by one and tied them together one by one. The overall situation was now settled. The shouts just now were getting closer and closer. Soon, Beta Persei took the lead and appeared in front of Yang Qindong. When he saw the scene in front of him, Beta Persei involuntarily knelt on the ground. His eyes were full of joy. After Sheeping King led 10,000 troops into the city through the East City Gate and headed towards the Three Provinces Palace, Beta Persei was like a mad dog. He led 10,000 people and rushed towards the Three Provinces Palace. During this period, he also encountered people from the three great clans and the Mu family's army. However, Beta Persei bravely rushed forward as if he did not care about his life. Anyone who blocked his way was either killed or seriously injured. But even so, he was still anxious. Although he was full of confidence in Yang Qindong, he was still afraid of what might happen. After finally rushing over and seeing that Yang Qindong was fine, Beta Persei felt exhaustion fill his body. He knelt on the ground with a plop. Go, help Beta Persei up. Seeing that this was caused by physical exhaustion, Yang Qindong hurriedly said to Ba Daojiang. Then, he lifted his foot and let the other black cavalry come forward and hold down Sheeping King Mubin. While removing the heavy machine from his body, Yang Qindong walked in front of Beta Persei and asked, "How's the situation outside?" After taking a few deep breaths, Beta Persei recovered some of his physical strength. He hurriedly got up and replied, "There's no big problem outside. Cheng Hu and the others are watching over there. They can't rush in." The battle to defend the city was not the key now. The Mu family's army had diverted some of their forces to block the reinforcements. Sheeping King had also personally rushed into the city. It seemed that the so-called siege was just a way to lure the tiger away from the mountain. Previously, when they had sufficient forces, they could not take down Yunnan Prefecture. Now that the forces were scattered, it was even more impossible to take down the city. Yang Shindong nodded after hearing this. At this time, Wang Shan ran out of the mansion and delivered the telegram sent by Yao Yingjun. Tell Yao Yingjun to just defend and wait for reinforcements. He just needs to keep an eye on the people who set up the ambush and don't let them escape. Since Shiping King had been captured, Yang Shindong no longer had anything to worry about. He also knew that his opponent had used up all of his tricks. Even so, it did not matter whether the reinforcements arrived earlier or later. The calmer Yang Shindong's tone was, the better everyone's expression became. Since the sixth young master said that it would be fine, it must be fine. Chapter 1595. Yunnan Manor was truly Yang Shindong's blessed land. He had only stayed here for a few days, but he had already captured the king of 3 provinces, Zhu Huihua. Now, even the king of Shiping, Mu Bin, was also captured. One must know that it would be very difficult to capture these 2 kings if they were to go to war. Even if the enemy was crippled, they might not be able to capture these 2 kings. It had to be said that Yang Shindong was very successful as bait. With the capture of the king of Shiping, good news came one after another. Yang San, Tai Hu, and the others appeared one by one. They did not come empty-handed. They cooperated with Captain Dao Xiao to eliminate the Mu army that was attacking the side and back doors of the Wang mansion. They also captured some captives, such as Qin Inkong and Wang Shufu, the Qin family's patriarch of the 3 great families of Yunnan Manor. They were also among the captives. With these people arrested, the Southern Cloud Manor finally calmed down. After learning that the fastest reinforcements would arrive at Yunnan Manor at night, Yang Shindong said to everyone, "It's time. Everyone, get ready to counterattack." It was time to counterattack. All the generals had excited expressions on their faces. These days, although their achievements were not small, if one looked carefully, they had always been passively taking a beating. They always had to wait for the other party to make the first move before they could react. This was not a good feeling, and it made everyone who was used to taking the initiative to attack very uncomfortable. Fortunately, this difficult time was about to pass. The main force of the 5-star army was about to arrive, and they could finally launch a counterattack without any scruples. Yunnan Manor began to get busy. Yang Chenjiang led Beta Persei, Yang San, Tai Hu, and the others to begin to formulate a counterattack plan. Outside the city, Lufji, who was still attacking the city, did not know what was happening inside the city. The West Gate, which was originally captured by the Mu army, had long been recaptured by the 5-star army. At this point, the news outside the city was completely cut off. Ravji was still leading his troops to attack the city. In order to protect Shiping King, who was in the city, the forces attacking the city were very aggressive. In just 4 hours, they had launched several attacks and lost more than 8,000 generals. In addition, there were also countless casualties. Seeing that there were only about 10,000 soldiers left, Ravji's expression turned ugly. He looked at Wu Yingtu and asked, "General Wu, do you have any ideas?" "My ass." Wu Yingtu, who was in a very bad mood, said angrily. Even though he was the Miao King, Wu Yingtu had not been doing well all these years. Firstly, there were too few Miao people, especially the young ones. Unlike the Han people, where a new batch would be born very quickly after the first batch was killed, the Miao people had a very small population, so their growth cycle was naturally very long. In order to fight for more benefits for the Miao people, Wu Yingtu had brought all the young people in the tribe out, all for the sake of fighting for more benefits. This was the last of his strength in the Miao people. However, in this battle, 70% of his 10,000 brave Miao soldiers died. Now, there were only 3,000 Miao people left, and more than 1,000 of them were injured. This result made him very depressed. So what if they won this battle? With this small number of people, when they split the benefits later, what he would get would be next to nothing. The drastic reduction in strength made Miao Ingtu very unhappy. When he heard Rajiv ask him, it would be strange if he had a good attitude. Rajiv had no other choice. He had only asked, but he did not expect to hear such an answer. His expression was very ugly, alternating between red and white. In the end, he did not say anything and left. At this moment, in Rajiv's eyes, Miao Ingtu had already formed a concept that was a person who was not worth his time. Men, get on a horse and contact young Master Mu. Ask for instructions on what to do next. Also, stop the siege for now. Rajiv was able to get to where he was today because he was a man with brains. After continuously attacking the city for more than 4 hours, not only did he fail to take down the city, he also suffered heavy losses. More importantly, he only had about 10,000 soldiers left. This made him have no choice but to consider his next step carefully. He even suspected that King Shiping did this on purpose, so that he could use the war to deplete his strength. If it was in the past, Rajiv would not be so anxious. He had the kingdom of Bangla as his backer. Without a source of soldiers, he could just recruit new ones. After a period of training, there would be an army that could fight. But now, even the king had surrendered. He no longer had a backer and a source of soldiers. In such a situation, every death meant one less person. He didn't know when he would be able to replenish his men. He had no choice but to think about it carefully. Also, why was there no movement in the city after more than 4 hours? Didn't King Shiping already arrange everything? Then what was all this about? He desperately wanted to know. So he arranged for someone to ask Mu Kong. Rajiv was not the only one who did not know that King Shiping had been captured by Yang Chendong. Even Mu Tsong did not know. At this moment, he was still in the forest, waiting for Yao Ingjun to appear. However, after the death of Jiang Wuqing and 5,000 cavalrymen, Yao Ingjun was clearly afraid and did not move forward. This was good too. Mu Tsong was also happy to have some peace. He was waiting for good news from Yunnan Manor. He was full of confidence in his father. What? Rajiv asked what to do next. What else can we do? Of course, we have to continue the siege. Tell him that the timing is not right, so my father did not make a move. That's why he has to go all out. If we don't attract the attention of the defenders, how can my father carry out his plan? Mu Tsong was resting against a tree when he was disturbed by the people sent by Lavajai. He immediately spoke with disdain. The men returned resentfully. When these words reached Rajiv's ears, he was stupefied. Then he reflected on himself. Could it be that the siege was not successful, and King Shiping did not see the right opportunity to make a move? If that was the case, he would have to work hard to continue the siege. Rajiv made a decision, or rather, he could only obey his decision. He went to find Wu Ingtu again to discuss the siege. Unfortunately, he was directly rejected this time. He was so angry that he cursed as soon as he left the tent. Wu Ingtu, this general will definitely tell young Master Mu about what you did. Don't think about fighting for something good in the future. After the angry Rajiv returned to the main camp, he gathered 10,000 soldiers under his command and launched another fierce attack on Yunnan Manor's West Gate Tower. Compared to before, this attack was more ferocious. It was obvious that he wanted to use the army to suppress the city and create enough conditions for King Shiping to make a move. Rajiv, who thought he was doing the right thing, did not know that the 5-star army's real reinforcements were less than 10 li away from Yunnan Manor's south. The first reinforcements were known as the King of Cavalry, the world's first cavalry army. After receiving Yang Chendong's telegram, each soldier was equipped with 4 horses and galloped out of Mount Liang under the lead of Army Commander Tian Hu. Along the way, they did not enter the city, but took a detour. When the black mass of cavalry passed by, the soldiers of the 3 provinces in each city closed their doors and did not come out. The might of this cavalry was so fierce that it gave people a feeling of invincibility from afar. It was already fortunate that they didn't attack their cities. Who would take the initiative to find trouble with them? Because there was no one to stop them, the world's first cavalry army moved faster and faster. Finally, after each of the riders had almost run 2 horses to death, they saw Yunnan Manor in the distance. At this time, Helu, the commander of the army guards, came to Tianhu with an urgent telegram. General, the sixth young master sent an urgent message. Stop. After stopping the horses, Tianhu ordered the army to stop and rest for a quarter of an hour. Using this opportunity, the other commanders came to him to discuss the next step of the battle. When the telegram was opened, it contained Yang Qindong's latest instructions. After reading it carefully, Tianhu laughed and said, "The sixth young master is indeed the sixth young master. Without us having to do anything, he has already captured the 3 provincial kings and the king of Sheeping." Ha ha, that's true. Although they are all kings, how can they be a match for the sixth young master? The other commanders also laughed after hearing this. During the past few days of rushing, it was impossible for them not to be anxious. They were especially worried about the safety of the sixth young master. Their past experience told them that the sixth young master was very powerful and would be fine. However, they only had 500 black cavalry with them, and Yunnan Manor was the base camp of the 3 provincial kings. Anything could happen in the enemy's camp. If something happened to the sixth young master, the 5 commanders did not dare to imagine what would happen next. Before the sixth young master left, he had already decided that the eldest crown prince, Yang Bo, would take over his position. However, could a 10-year-old child really lead them? What if someone was not convinced? After all, the Yangtze was too big. It was so big that no country, force, or ethnic group could compare with it since ancient times. Would anyone have the confidence to let a 10-year-old child manage such a big country? At that time, it was possible that the huge Yang family would fall apart in an instant. If that was the case, where should they go from here? Even if they obeyed the young master's orders, they would have to fight with their former colleagues. In that case, the only thing that would be lost was the strength of the Yangtze. If that was the case, it would be very difficult for the Yangtze to develop in the future. In short, if something happened to Yang Qindong now, the consequences would be unimaginable. In order to avoid such a situation, they could only rush with all their might. At the same time, they prayed that the sixth young master would be fine. Chapter 1596. Now that they had received the latest telegram from Yang Qindong, they could finally breathe a sigh of relief. While they breathed a sigh of relief, they began to think about how to make a contribution. More importantly, they were thinking about how to deal with those who wanted to go against the sixth young master. All right, everyone has read the contents of the telegram. Since that's the case, I've decided to split into 2 groups. The world's first cavalry army was less than 10 miles away, but Rajiv had no idea about that. Although he had heard about the arrival of the 5-star Army's main force from some sources, in his opinion, the reinforcements would not arrive so easily. They would have to pass through many cities in the 3 provinces to reach southern Cloud Prefecture from Liang Mountain. Therefore, he did not think that other than Yao Ingjuan's reinforcements, Bugnam of Gojoseon would arrive in such a short time. Now, he was wholeheartedly sending troops to attack the city. The attack was not going well. It was even a little tragic. Rajiv did not know that Sheeping King had been captured. The surrendered soldiers and civilians in the city knew about it, so they could focus on defending the city without worrying about other changes. This boosted the morale of the soldiers defending the city. With the advantage of numbers, the counterattack was fierce. Rajiv was destined to meet a tough opponent. His excessive trust in Sheeping King had also doomed Rajiv to a tragedy. Seeing that the soldiers attacking the city had suffered heavy losses, and soon, more than half of the 10,000 soldiers were killed, he still had no intention of stopping the attack. At this moment, he was like a gambler, putting all his treasures on the line, hoping for a miracle to happen. Would a miracle happen? Of course, it was impossible. Not only did Sheeping King not show up, but a mighty cavalry team came from afar. They were wearing light green military uniforms and black armor. Each of them had 2 horses. While they were still far away, the battle cries could be heard. Is Sheeping King here? The excited Rajiv raised his eyes and looked. He was very excited. No one answered him because the others did not know how King Sheeping's army was dressed. However, someone in the crowd recognized him. He was King Miao Wu Yingtu. In the past, when he followed Zhu Huichun, he had dealt with the Mu family army. Naturally, he knew what the other party was like. Let's not talk about whether or not they had that many cavalry troops. Just from their appearance alone, they didn't look like one at all. Instead, they looked like the legendary five-star army's cavalry. It had long been rumored that the regular five-star army wore military green uniforms. This was very different from the military uniforms that were either black, gray, or even yellow. Because of this, Wu Yingtu's expression changed drastically. Not to mention, Wu Yingtu had once fought with the five-star army, but he had been defeated and fled. Could it be that the reinforcements from the five-star army have really arrived? But how could they be so fast? Doubts arose in his heart, but he quickly suppressed them because he knew that this was not the time to be conflicted. It was the time to make a choice. If the reinforcements from the five-star army really came, then they would not be a match for the enemy with their current strength. In fact, when the infantry faced the cavalry, the idea of survival instantly occupied the highest point. Then, his gaze fell on Rajiv. Perhaps his only chance of survival depended on this person. Wu Yingtu was already having second thoughts. Rajiv did not know about this at all. He was still looking forward to the cavalry's arrival. Surround him. It's this Rajiv. He overestimated himself and wants to become an enemy of Bugnam of Gojoseon. Men, capture him. Kill anyone who resists. Since he had decided to live, Wu Yingtu did not care about whether he was a comrade or not. He only knew that if he captured this person and presented him to the five-star army, there might be a way to survive. Wu Yingtu led 3,000 Miao soldiers and suddenly attacked, catching Rajiv off guard. Seeing that many of his soldiers were killed by the Miao soldiers, he was furious. He roared loudly, "Wu Yingtu, are you trying to rebel? Can't you see that the king of Sheeping is already here with his cavalry? What are you trying to do? Ha ha, open your dog eyes and see clearly. How was that king of Sheeping's cavalry? It's clearly the reinforcements from the five-star army. Even now, do you still place your hopes on Mu Bin? Can't you see that he's trying to weaken our strength? It's hateful that you're so badly injured, but you still don't understand. I really don't know how you survived all these years." Facing Rajiv's questioning, Wu Yingtu was not afraid at all. Instead, he shouted and questioned Rajiv. Rajiv didn't care about making use of them anymore. He was more concerned about who the cavalry belonged to. When he heard Wu Yingtu say that it was the reinforcements from the five-star army, his expression changed greatly. At this moment, he did not want to be entangled with Wu Yingtu and the Miao soldiers. He only wanted to escape as soon as possible. Escaping was more important. You still want to leave? Do you think you can leave? He knew that if he did not capture Rajiv, once the five-star army caught up, he would not have a good ending. So how could he give up on his only hope of survival? Everyone kill. Capture Rajiv alive and present him to the five-star army. There will be a great reward. With a loud shout, Wu Yingtu took the lead and rushed forward with his ghost head blade. With a few slashes, he cut down several soldiers and got closer and closer to Rajiv. "You're courting death." Seeing his soldiers being cut down one by one, Rajiv became anxious. He knew that if he did not kill Wu Yingtu, he would not be able to escape. He simply rushed over with his spear. Before the world's 1st Cavalry Army's 4th and 5th Divisions arrived, the battle had already turned into a mess. The 4th Division Commander Suda and the 5th Division Commander Yu Zhong glanced at each other. They didn't have any intention of taking action. They just ordered the cavalry to surround the scene. In short, they couldn't let the enemy who wanted to deal with the 6th young master escape. The battle in the field was still ongoing. Because of the number of soldiers and the premeditated plan, the Miao army gradually gained the upper hand. At this time, Wu Yingtu was leading 6 of his soldiers to surround Rajiv. As expected of the great general of Banka, Rajiv's personal strength was not bad. In just a short while, no less than 6 or 7 Miao soldiers had died under his spear. However, even a tiger could not withstand a pack of wolves. After a long battle, Rajiv finally felt that his strength was running out. It was also at this time that Miao Ingto's ghost head blade arrived and landed on the body of the spear. Under the powerful force, the spear flew out of Rajiv's hand. Without a weapon, Rajiv could only dodge left and right without any ability to counterattack. If he kept defending, he would definitely lose. After a few more rounds, Rajiv was careless and his left arm was chopped off. He immediately let out a blood-curdling scream as he lost his balance and fell to the ground. Then a few Miao soldiers rushed over and pinned him to the ground, tying him up tightly. Rajiv was captured. Seeing that the situation was over, the soldiers under his command abandoned their weapons and surrendered. At this point, the situation was settled. Wu Yingtu quickly tidied up his clothes and came in front of the two division commanders Su De and Yu Zhong who were riding in front of the army. After a long bow, he opened his mouth and said, "I am Wu Yingtu, the commander of the Miao army. Because I went astray, I became an accomplice of the 3 provincial kings. Now that I have turned over a new leaf, I am willing to surrender to Bugnam of Gojoseon. I have specially captured the great general of Banka, Rajiv, to show my sincerity. I hope the general can give me a way out. Thank you." Oh, Su De and Yu Zhong looked at each other after hearing this, then nodded and said, "General Wu, we will remember what you have done, but now we still have to tie you up. As for how to deal with you, it will ultimately be decided by Bugnam of Gojoseon. Do you agree?" "I agree." Wu Yingtu gritted his teeth and said helplessly. He didn't know what his future would be like. Now he could only hope that Yang Qindong would remember his contributions and not kill him. Under the city walls of Yunnan Prefecture, the chaotic battle ended dramatically. Without waiting for the world's first cavalry army to make a move, tens of thousands of enemy troops had all surrendered. This made the surrendered soldiers and the people in the city cheered. Beta Persei, who was standing on the city tower, also waved his hand with joy and said, "Come on, open the city gate and welcome the army into the city." In the dense forest, Muzong was still sleeping comfortably against a tree. In his dream, he saw his father capturing Yang Qindong and making a great contribution. This was where Muzong's confidence in his father came from. After all, the Mu family had been operating in Yunnan Prefecture for a long time. In addition, they suddenly appeared and attacked. How could Bugnam of Gojoseon, who had just arrived for a few days, contend against them? As his son, he only needed to wait for Yunnan Prefecture to be taken down by his father. Then he would return with the army. At that time, they would immediately contact the Southern Ming army. With the support of the Southern Ming army, how could a leaderless 5-star army be a match? In his dream, Muzong was already overjoyed. He even saw the Southern Ming Empire's reinforcements coming. It was a mighty and majestic cavalry. Their arrival caused the earth to tremble. It was truly awe-inspiring. Crown Prince, this is bad. Another cavalry unit is coming." Just when Muzong was still dreaming, he suddenly heard such a voice. Then his shoulder was shaken and he became completely awake. What's going on? When he opened his eyes and saw General Azad shaking him, Muzong still had a sleepy expression. "Prince, a large number of cavalry suddenly appeared behind us." "They cavalry? Are the Southern Ming army's reinforcements here?" Muzong was still in a dream and couldn't extricate himself. No, they're using the banner of the 5-star army." Azad's face was pale and his body was trembling. "What? 5-star army? That's impossible." Muzong's first thought was disbelief, then he kept shaking his head. Behind them was Yunnan Prefecture. His father should have taken down by now. Then how could there be 5-star army's reinforcements coming from this direction? Chapter 1597. Regardless of whether he believed it or not, the truth was the truth. Behind them, there was indeed a large number of 5-star army cavalry rushing over, causing an earthquake on the ground. At the north side of the forest, Yao Ingjun also rushed over with 15,000 infantrymen. They split into 2 sides and blocked off the forest. How is this possible? Mu Tsung's mouth was so wide open that a fist could be stuffed inside. His expression became somewhat sinister at this moment. The arrival of the 5-star army cavalry was from the direction of Yunnan Manor. Did that mean that Yunnan Manor was also completely under their control? If that was the case, where was his royal father? Why didn't anyone inform him when such a big thing happened? Mu Tsung couldn't figure it out, but it wasn't a matter of whether he wanted to or not. The 5-star army had already launched their attack. Facing enemies in the forest, they had a way to attack. For example, the simplest fire attack. Countless arrows fell like rain into the dense forest, and a raging fire began to burn. The Mu family troops who were hiding in the forest became even more chaotic. The soldiers were full of confidence before, because the 5-star army was finished and even Bugnam of Gojoseon might be captured. But now, the appearance of the 5-star army's cavalry dispelled their thoughts and made them feel that their lives were in danger. The arrows fell and ignited the forest. The Mu family troops who had nowhere else to go could only charge out and fight to their deaths. Fight to the death. The two generals, Azad and Hak, decisively made a decision. They had fled all the way here. Now that they didn't even have a country, they didn't have much hope for the future. Now that they could die for a noble cause, they might as well fight to the death. But the two didn't notice that when they led their troops to attack, the savior in their eyes, young Master Mu Tsung, disappeared. On the official road, the forest on both sides was set ablaze. More and more Mu family troops rushed out from both sides of the road. Azad and Huk rushed out from the east side of the forest, while Luo Guan led his army and rushed out from the west side of the road. When the two armies joined together, there were nearly 20,000 men and horses charging towards the 5-star army's cavalry. They didn't choose to attack Yao Ingjuan's troops because they didn't want to expose their backs to the cavalry. This would only accelerate their defeat. However, was it really a good choice to target the world's #1 cavalry army? Haha, it's good that you've come. I'm leaving. 1st Division Commander Tame Mu had always been a valiant warrior who loved to lead the charge. When he saw the enemy charging at him, how could he be courteous? He immediately squeezed his horse's belly with his legs and led his 10,000 soldiers to charge forward. The first merit belongs to our 2nd Division. 2nd Division Lu Duo was unwilling to fall behind and rushed out. 3rd Division Commander Hu Bo also wasn't going to sit back and watch. He wanted to rush out as well, but Commander Tian, who came in front of him. 3rd Division Commander, they are enough. Your division is in charge of guarding. Remember, no one is allowed to escape. If they want to make an enemy out of the 6th young master, they will have to pay the heaviest price. Oh, although he was a bit unwilling, a military order was absolute. After Hu Bo agreed, he spread out the 10,000 cavalry soldiers of the 3 divisions and completely surrounded the 2 forests. No one was allowed to escape. Using infantry against cavalry was like using scissors while the other side used rocks. The result was mostly predetermined. There were also powerful infantry that could fight evenly with cavalry. However, infantry usually had the advantage of terrain and numbers, or they were proficient in battle formations and had more powerful weapons. Clearly, the Mu clan army didn't have the advantage. Therefore, when they had the same number of troops, using infantry against cavalry was no different from seeking death. Not to mention the world's #1 cavalry army. Even if it was an ordinary cavalry, victory would be assured against 20,000 infantry. Moreover, the ones fighting were Temu and the others. There was no possibility of failure. The result was that the moment the two sides met, before they even started fighting, under a dense rain of arrows, the Mu clan army at the front fell one after another. When the cavalry charged into the midst of the infantry, heads flew all over the ground. One by one, the Mu clan infantry were cut down, blood spilling everywhere. This was a battle where the strength was completely unequal. The infantry didn't have any formation to speak of. They were completely relying on brute force to attack. Facing the world's #1 cavalry army's cavalry, they were only sending themselves to their deaths. The cavalry quickly passed through the Mu clan infantry. A quarter of the 20,000 men were gone. Then there was a recoil, division, and countless arrow formations formed, constantly killing. The ground was covered with more and more Mu clan soldiers' corpses. By the time Yao Ingjun arrived at the battlefield with his army, all he saw were broken limbs, blood splattered all over the ground, and heads rolling down. "General Yao, I'll leave the task of cleaning up the battlefield to you." He, riding on his horse, Commander Temu, showed Yao Ingjun his row of white teeth, then urged his horse to leave with the army. The world's #1 cavalry army had their own pride. As long as there were infantry, they would never interfere with work like cleaning up the battlefield. Yao Ingjun cupped his fists and thanked Temu, as he watched the cavalry leave. It must be known that although cleaning up the battlefield was tiring, there were many benefits. Not only could they get a share of the military merits, but they could also get all the good things from the enemy corpses. Just this point alone was enough to make many people envious. It only took them more than 2 hours to kill the enemy, but they still hadn't finished cleaning up the battlefield, even when the sky turned dark. The army had no choice but to rest and wait for the next day to start cleaning up. Tian, who left the 3rd Division's commander, Hubo to cooperate with Yao Ingjun while he led the army to Yunnan Manor not far away. In Yunnan Manor, peace had already been restored. The 5-star army's main reinforcements had arrived. Naturally, there was no need for the surrendered soldiers and ordinary citizens to defend the city. They could all return home to reunite with their families. For a moment, many sounds of joy and laughter could be heard from the various courtyards. Of course, there were also some people who died in battle. As their families, they naturally couldn't be happy. Fortunately, the 5-star army's compensation was generous enough. Although it didn't satisfy everyone, most people still accepted this form of compensation. After all, if they didn't follow the 5-star army, but followed the 3 provinces' kings or king-sheeping instead, it would be impossible for them to receive these benefits even if they died. This battle also made the citizens fully aware of the value of peace. People died in war. Who knew how many families were torn apart because of it? This was something that couldn't be bought with money. The 3 provinces' palace was also very lively at this time. The reinforcements had arrived. Veda Persei, Yongsan, and the others finally didn't have to worry so much. They finally had a chance to have a good meal and then sleep. Tian, who also brought the 1st Division and 2nd Division into the city. He personally went to the 3 provinces' palace to see Yang Qindong, 6th young master. The moment he saw Yang Qindong, Tian, who couldn't help but cry. Without knowing the secret of Yang Qindong's possession, none of the high-ranking officers felt at ease this time. Okay, a man bleeds, but not tears. Don't cry. Yang Qindong personally got up and helped Tian Hu up. 6th young master, your actions this time were too risky. But some people are too hateful. They actually want to deal with you. In this matter, the Southern Ming dynasty must be secretly supporting them. Do you think we should send troops to Nanjing? Please rest assured, 6th young master, my world's 1st cavalry army is willing to be the vanguard. After the greeting, Tian Hu took the initiative to ask for a battle. With the current strength of the world's 1st cavalry army, these words could be said and done. Yang Qindong knew this, but he decisively shook his head. Tian Hu, this young master can understand your feelings, but now is not the time to do this. The Southern Ming dynasty is full of Han people. It would be best if it can be accepted peacefully. Accepted peacefully? Is there such a possibility? Tian Hu asked with some doubts. The process is of course tortuous, but this young master already has an idea. You don't have to worry. Yang Qindong once again showed a confident smile. In the Southern Ming dynasty, he had already played a big game of chess. If the other party agreed, it would be fine. If they didn't agree, then he would be doomed. Nanning Prefecture. As the capital of Guangxi Province, the general's mansion in Nanning Prefecture was also brightly lit. The general of Guangxi Province, Bai Kuan, was currently sitting cross-legged. Although this was his mansion, there was still a hint of nervousness on his face. Opposite Bai Kuan was a scholar in a long robe. This person's appearance was not ordinary, and he looked very kind. If it wasn't for the arrogance that flashed in the corner of his eyes from time to time, he would have given people a better impression. The scholar in the long robe reached out and took a sip of the tea. He frowned slightly. Obviously, the rough tea leaves made him somewhat unhappy. However, when he thought of his mission, he didn't say anything about this matter. On the contrary, he said against his will, "Good tea. Assistant Minister Zhou is too polite. How can a martial artist like me know what good tea is? As long as you are happy, I will be happy." He constantly paid attention to the actions of the man in the long robe. Some flattering words came out of his mouth. He really had to be polite. This Assistant Minister Zhou was the left Assistant Minister of the Southern Ming Dynasty's Ministry of Rites, Zhou Xiang. It was said that he was deeply favored by the emperor. For martial artists like him, it was usually impossible to invite him to sit together. Now that he finally had the opportunity to sit together, of course, he would try his best to please him. Chapter 1598. Not to mention, Bai Kuan was also a criminal, who told him to be a subordinate of the three provinces' king, Zhu Huiyan. The commoners didn't know, but how could he not know? The Southern Ming imperial court didn't have any impression of the three provinces' king. If it wasn't for the fact that they needed to use this barrier to block the five-star army, they would have already dealt with him. Now that Bugnam of Gojoseon and the three provinces' king were fighting, no matter who won or lost, the Southern Ming imperial court didn't need to make a move. This was a great thing. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Zhou Xiang suddenly appeared and represented Zhu Qizhen in recruiting Bai Kuan. Zhu Qizhen was the emperor of the great Ming dynasty, and Bai Kuan was just a martial artist. How could he not agree? How could he dare to disagree? This led to the scene where the two of them sat together. Now that everyone was seated together, Zhou Xiang was obviously the leader. Whatever he said, Bai Kuan obeyed. This was also a general's respect for the imperial power and his desire for power. Considering the great Ming dynasty's emphasis on literature and suppression of military power, military officials had never had a high social status. Many military officials even had to lower their heads to civil officials to ensure their position. They needed to find a backer. Bai Kuan simply treated Zhou Xiang as a backer and respected him. Speaking of which, Bai Kuan had only been a chiliarch in the past. It was only because Zhu Huixin had taken a liking to him that Bai Kuan had promoted him and given him the authority to command the entire Guangxi army. That was how he had gained his current reputation. Zhou Xiang looked down on such a rootless person from the bottom of his heart. If it wasn't for the fact that he still needed Bai Kuan, he wouldn't even look at him. However, Guangxi's position was very important now. It replaced the original Yunnan manor and became Bugnam of Gojoseon's border. This also caused Bai Kuan's status to rise, which was why Zhou Xiang lowered himself to come here. However, no matter what, the tradition of scholars looking down on martial artists was still there. As for Bai Kuan's flattery, Zhou Xiang thought that everything was normal. Zhou Xiang pretended to be very enthusiastic and said to Bai Kuan, "General Bai, this time, the emperor is very optimistic about you." After knowing that General Bai has abandoned the dark side and joined the light side, he was very happy. He even handed over the military power of Guangxi to you. You can't let the emperor down. Yes, yes. This general thanks his majesty for his benevolence. But this lowly one knows that this was all because of Assistant Minister Zhou, so this lowly one is even more grateful. When you leave in a while, I have a small gift to send you off. Bai Kuan said humbly, as if giving Zhou Xiang a gift was a great job. Ha ha. Seeing how sensible Bai Kuan was, Zhou Xiang chuckled. General Bai is too polite. It would be impolite for this old man to refuse. In fact, we are all working for His Majesty, so it is only right that we work hard. Yes, it is only right that we work for His Majesty. Bai Kuan repeated these words. Oh, that's right. General Bai, I don't know if you've thought about it, but no matter who wins or loses this battle, there will be people coming to look for you very soon. I wonder how you will deal with them? Zhou Xiang joked as he brought the topic back to business. Bai Kuan was very clear that this was a test for him. He had asked himself this question before. At this moment, he did not hesitate to answer. Is there even a need to ask? I, Bai Kuan, am a man of Southern Ming. Even if I die, I will be a ghost of Southern Ming. Whether it is the 3 provincial kings or Bugnam of Gojoseon, they are nothing. If they dare to come, they will definitely hit a wall. Our Guangxi prefecture's 50,000 soldiers are not to be trifled with. Haha, good. General Bai is very bold. Come, let this assistant minister toast you with tea. This result was very pleasing to Zhou Xiang's ears. Naturally, his mood was very good. This general doesn't dare. This general is the one toasting you. Bai Kuan smiled, revealing a row of teeth as he raised the teacup in his hand. The two looked at each other and drank. After putting down the teacup, Zhou Xiang chuckled. Actually, things might not be that bad. Although Bugnam of Gojoseon is powerful, he has already entered Yunnan Prefecture and is a turtle in a jar. Perhaps the 3 provincial kings have already taken him down. Furthermore, we still have Shiping King in Yunnan. He will keep an eye on that place. Nothing will happen, even if someone wants to harm Guangxi. This assistant minister has already spoken to the Guangdong political commissioner, Yang Xian. When the time comes, the Guanghai Guard will send reinforcements. At that time, with the geographical advantage, no one will be able to gain any advantage. Yes, everything will be according to Sir Zhou's arrangements. Sir Zhou, this general is toasting you. Please have some tea. Bai Kuan nodded. He had the backing of the Southern Ming dynasty, so he was not afraid of anyone coming to find trouble with him. If anyone came, he would use all his strength to kick them out. At that time, he would be able to obtain military merits. One wanted to curry favor, while the other wanted to appease people. The atmosphere was getting better and better. About an hour later, Zhou Xiang left in satisfaction. Of course, before he left, someone had already handed him a 5,000 taels banknote. This made his smile even brighter. However, this brilliance did not last for long. After just one night, when Zhou Xiang woke up again, a servant placed the contents of the letter he had just received in front of him. When he read the contents, Zhou Xiang, who originally had a slight urge to pee, no longer had the urge to do so. He became extremely clear-headed. It says that the 3 provincial kings and Shiping King were captured by Wu Nanwu. Is this true? It can't be a mistake, right? Holding the letter, he asked the person who had delivered the letter with a look of disbelief. The messenger could feel Zhou Xiang's anger, so at this moment, he only knelt on the ground and did not even dare to raise his head. Zhou Xiang knew that the contents could not be wrong, but he did not dare to believe it. Didn't they say that Bugnam of Gojoseon was arrogant and only brought 500 people into Yunnan Manor? The 3 provincial kings had prepared tens of thousands of soldiers and were waiting for the other party to fall into their trap. How did Zhu Huihua get captured? How did this trick work? There was also Shiping King Mubin. He was at the periphery of Yunnan Manor and should have acted according to the situation. If things went south, he could still escape if he could not win. How did he get captured? What exactly happened in the middle of all this? Zhou Xiang could not figure out. Looking at the trembling messenger kneeling on the ground, he said, "Send a messenger pigeon to the Southern Cloud Manor's embroidered uniform guards. Ask them what happened and how it ended up like this. Report back to me after you figure it out." Finally, he could leave. The messenger in charge of the messenger pigeon quickly nodded and was about to leave. "Wait, this matter cannot be publicized now. If the news is leaked, I will take your life." Thinking that once the news was out, it might cause panic, so Zhou Xiang decided to suppress this matter first. "I understand." The messenger nodded in agreement and finally left, leaving Zhou Xiang alone to sit there and think. After a long time, he sighed. Things changed so quickly that it was somewhat unbelievable. Zhou Xiang could not help but think that the situation in Guangxi seemed to be a bit dangerous. Guangxi was indeed in danger. Zhu Huihua was the king of 3 provinces. This time, Yang Qindong only brought 500 black cavalry and rushed into Yunnan Manor because Zhu Huihua promised that as long as he came, he would hand over the power of the 3 provinces. Although Zhu Huihua had broken his promise, Yang Qindong still kept his promise. Of course, Now was the time to take back the power of the three provinces. It was just Guangxi. It was impossible to say that Yang Qindong valued it. Currently, Yangtze's territory was rich and populous, so Guangxi province was not a big deal. However, if he wanted to swallow the entire Great Ming, Guangxi was the only way. In addition, he was justified this time. How could he let go of such a good opportunity? First, he met Yao Yingjun and learned that Guizhou had changed sides and voluntarily joined Yangtze. Now that Yunnan was under his feet, and even Shiping's Wang Mubin was captured by him, it was time to solve the problem of Guangxi. Jiang Wuqing died a heroic death. Generous compensation. His family will be rewarded with land. If his children are of appropriate age, they can be sent to the Yang clan school in Sushin City to study. Yao Yingjun's loyalty is commendable. His personal ability is outstanding, drafting the military affairs of Guizhou and Yunnan. When there is a suitable candidate in the future, he will be replaced. If the soldiers who follow Jiang Daqing are willing to join the five-star army, they can pass the examination. Those who are not willing to join the army and are willing to follow the people will be given land. Captives must be protected. After paying money, they can also serve the people. Those who can't find a protector will have to serve the Yangtze according to their rank. When the time is up, they will be sent to other Yangtze provinces. They can also enjoy the respect of the Han people. In this battle, the surrendered generals will be judged according to their performance. Those who have performed meritorious deeds can be reduced to commoners. Those who do not change will be sentenced to death or 3 to 30 years of reform through labor. Orders came out of Yang Qindong's mouth. The chaos in Yunnan Prefecture was quickly being dealt with. At the same time, the food and other necessities from the other provinces were quickly distributed to Yunnan and Guizhou. This was to ensure that the people here had clothes to wear, food to eat, money to earn, money to spend, and things to buy. After all, this was the land of the Han people. Yang Qindong gave the people here sufficient respect. Not only did he not force them to move, but he also redistributed land and property to ensure that everyone had land to farm and things to do. Of course, the policy of relocation still had to be announced. Although Yangtze's territory was large enough, the number of Han people was still too small. This caused the influence of the Han people to be unable to reach the level that Yang Qindong wanted. Chapter 1599. If the millions of people in the two provinces were willing to migrate, it would greatly increase the number of Han people in the other Yangtze provinces. It would also allow Han culture to spread to other foreign races faster, allowing the custom of Han people being respected to continue. Since they wanted the remaining people to have land to farm, where would the land come from? They would need to take advantage of the rich, which are the nobles and gentry. If there was no suitable reason before, the assassination of Yang Qindong by the three great clans of Yunnan was the best reason. For example, the deceased head of the Li clan, Li Jiayin, all of his assets were confiscated immediately. According to the statistics, Li Jiayin's family alone occupied thousands of hectares of fertile land, silver, and all kinds of goods and shops amounted to 12 million taels of silver. When this harvest was reported to Yang Qindong, it gave him a fright. He had expected Li Jiayin to be rich, but he did not expect him to be so rich. Unfortunately, it was not desirable to hide wealth among the people. Those who were truly rich were misers. They only had themselves in their hearts, and they were even willing to betray their country and people for benefits. It was like the 8 great merchants of Shangxi in the late Ming dynasty. They earned money from the Ming dynasty's government and the people, but in the end, they funded the enemy. It was because of this that a small slave had occupied all of China's rivers and mountains. Thinking about it, wasn't the last emperor of the Ming dynasty, Chongzhen, defeated because he had no money and no pay? The funny thing was that an emperor needed to borrow money from his officials, but in the end, there was no one he could borrow money from. He did not know how many good words he said, but in the end, he persuaded his father-in-law to lend him 30,000 taels of silver. It seemed like he had dug out his heart and cut his flesh. But in reality, When the Roman king entered the capital, he actually plundered more than 6 million taels of silver from the emperor's father-in-law's house. With so much money, the emperor only borrowed 1/20th of the money and cried to the heavens and the earth. In the end, he lost both his life and wealth. Presumably, when he was killed by the Roman king, he regretted it, right? No, not necessarily. Some people were like this. They would not shed tears until they saw the coffin, and even if they saw the coffin, they would not shed tears. They regarded money as more important than the sky, even more important than their own lives. She really didn't know how such people's brains were developed and what they were thinking. Having said that, even if Yang Qindong knew that there was such a thing, he would never allow the same thing to happen in his Yang family, especially under his nose. For this reason, he had formulated a series of rules when Yang Xie was developing. For example, Yang Xie encouraged business, but the business tax was very heavy, reaching 7 out of 10. In other words, the merchants of Yang Xie had to pay a tax of 700 coins every time they made a profit. After deducting the expenses, only about 50 coins would fall into the hands of the merchants. By doing this, not only did it prevent some merchants from rising up, but it also filled the Yang Xie's treasury. Also, Yang Xie merchants were not allowed to be officials, not even within the 5 blessings. Once discovered, he would definitely be severely punished. At the very least, they would be stripped of their position and fined silver. At the very least, it would be possible for their entire family to be exterminated. Since ancient times, collusion between officials and merchants had always been a big problem, but it was unavoidable. Yang Qindong had set such a rule when he first created the rules. It was to prevent people from becoming too powerful under him. In the end, his descendants would also be under the control of others. Yang Qindong would never allow his descendants to borrow money from his officials one day. That would be too shameful, and it would be too much of a failure. Speaking of which, the matter of the Li family made Yang Qindong see the drawbacks of the great Ming dynasty. At the same time, he also began to deal with these people. For this reason, he specially formulated some rules for these officials and villagers. For example, ordinary people had the right to choose whether or not to migrate, or where to migrate to. However, these people did not have this right. Not only did they have to leave their homeland, but they also had to go to a place designated by Yang Xie. Whether they liked it or not, they had to do so. Otherwise, the soldiers of the 5-star army would teach them a lesson. Also, before migrating, they had to conduct an in-depth investigation. For example, what kind of person were they? Did they oppress the people? Did they have a murder case? If there was, then sorry, they would be punished according to how they should be punished. If they were involved in a criminal case, they would be sentenced according to how they should be sentenced. If they caused deep resentment, they would be beheaded. When this policy was announced, it really scared a lot of people. In particular, the 2 families, Qin Inkong and Wang Shufu, were taken to the largest square in Yunnan Manor. A public denunciation meeting was held, allowing the people who had suffered from their sufferings to complain. The scene could really be described as earth-shattering, and it could even make ghosts weep. This was because all the people in the city who heard the news came. The feeling of being able to see the usually high and mighty dignitaries bow their heads in front of them was really too good. The grievance meeting and the complaint meeting were held for a day. Later, it was confirmed that Qin Inkong was guilty of the most heinous crimes. He colluded with the government to rob people of their land, occupied real estate, and even killed 56 people. When the evidence was presented one by one, Beta Persei announced on behalf of Yang Qindong that he would be executed on the spot, and his head would be chopped off in the square. As for the other members of the Qin family, they were also sentenced for their crimes. Some were beheaded, and some were sentenced to 3 to 30 years in prison. This really shocked a lot of people. When they saw that Bugnam of Gojoseon was serious, the people cheered, while the dignitaries were pale. Those villagers who were usually good people were better off. At the very least, those who had a habit of deceiving the common people directly fainted. The people ran around to spread the news. They had taken revenge, and they were finally the masters. The next day, it was Wang Shufu's Wang family's turn. In contrast, Wang Shufu was usually reasonable. At least, he had not personally killed anyone. There were a few bastards in his family who were found to have been sentenced to a corresponding term after being found out. As for him, he was returned home without any charges. Only 90% of his family's property was confiscated, and he was allowed to take the remaining 10% and move to other provinces designated by Yang Xie. This combination of punches was really just rewards and punishments. Seeing that the Wang family was fine, some people were relieved. At this point, the dignitaries that had troubled the great Ming dynasty for many years were easily dealt with by Yang Qindong. This was because Yang Qindong was ruthless enough. In addition, he was the founder and had the power that no one could restrict, so he dared to do this. If his son wanted to do this, it would be very difficult. However, once the news spread, it would inevitably lead to conflicts between the dignitaries and the dignitaries of other provinces. When Yao Yingjun told this to Yang Qindong, he chuckled and said, "It's fine. We didn't intend to reason with them anyway. As long as they enter my Yang Xie, they will either follow my rules or seek their own deaths. There is no third choice. Don't worry, they know what to choose." Yang Qindong had this confidence. Facts also prove that in the Han territory occupied by the Yang family in the future, although the dignitaries and squires there offset each other in every way, in the end, they did not form a climate and threat. In the end, from opposition to compromise, and then to the habit of following. This proved that as long as one was ruthless, there was no problem that could not be solved. The most important thing was whether one dared to be ruthless and whether they could carry it out. After dealing with the matters of the Qin and Wang clans, Yang Qindong handed these trivial matters over to Yao Yingjun. Yao Yingjun had authority in an army. With Yao Yingjun's ability, dealing with these matters was a piece of cake. On the other hand, Yang Qindong's thoughts were on the matter of conquering the Guangxi province. The Intelligence Bureau had already sent a secret report that the Guangxi general, Bai Kuan, had already contacted the Southern Ming dynasty and changed sides. Yang Qindong was not surprised at all by this result. Although in terms of strength, Yang Xie was far above the Great Ming dynasty. In terms of influence, the Han territories still belonged to the Great Ming dynasty. Unless Yang Qindong carried out a bloody massacre in the land of Huaxia like he did to other alien races, he still needed to rely on the breath of Huaxia. Unless it was absolutely necessary, Yang Qindong did not want to use the methods he used to deal with the Outlanders in the Great Ming dynasty. As such, he would most likely come into contact with negotiations or economic blockades. Speaking of economic blockades, Yang Qindong had already prepared a method. Over the years, in order to maintain the relationship with the Southern Ming dynasty, Yang Xie had sold large amounts of food to the Southern Ming dynasty at a low price. Sometimes, it was even cheaper than what he sold. Many times, Yang Xie would even sell food to the Southern Ming dynasty at a loss in order to let the Southern Ming dynasty develop a habit of trusting him. In the past 10 years, the results were quite good. At the very least, from the Intelligence Bureau's investigation, there were very few people who actually grew food in the Southern Ming dynasty. It was not profitable at all. It was better to buy the food than to grow it yourself. What would you choose? The direct result was that there was a large amount of uncultivated land in the Southern Ming dynasty. Many of the originally fertile lands were covered with weeds that were half the height of a person. Because of this, the Southern Ming dynasty wanted to manage the land and had tried before. However, they found that after investing a lot of manpower and resources, the final results were not very good. When they even lost money, no one had any ideas about the land. There was no profit. In the current Southern Ming dynasty, at least 9.5 out of 10 pieces of land were uncultivated. At this time, if the food supply to the Southern Ming dynasty was suddenly cut off, one could imagine what kind of effect it would have. Of course, the Southern Ming dynasty was also full of talents. They seemed to be afraid that this problem would affect the imperial court, so they built a granary in advance and filled it with food. It was said that it was enough to feed the entire Southern Ming dynasty for 2 years. In other words, once Yang Xie cut off their food supply, they would have 2 years to deal with it. In this way, the problem could be solved. However, since Yang Chendong was prepared to use the food supply issue to threaten the Southern Ming dynasty, how could they not have any methods? You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.